Should I read something from the book? I know how to read sometimes.
If you want to start that way, we can.
So let me get on my Shecky Green. While I was knee deep in the world of the gods, my relationship with third base came deeper into play as I signed KMD, who were managed and signed through MC Search and Pete Nice's Riff production company. I forgot who actually brought them to me, but I'm pretty sure it was Search. They were buzzing after Doom had a stellar verse on third base's Gas Face. KMD was at its center, the Doomale brothers, Daniel Zevlov X, AKA MF Doom, and Ding Wilsey, which I could never pronounce, DJ Subrock. Doom was born in the UK, but his family moved to New York before Subrock was born. The brothers went to elementary school in Manhattan before the family moved to Long Island. Even though Doom was 2 years older, they seemed more like twins. Their childhood friend, Alonzo Hodge Onyx, completed the group, rapping on several songs. Doom and Sub were amazingly talented in everything from art to music to social observation. The group itself was pretty self-contained and had a concrete vision. They did most of their demos with John Gamble in my studio, and I heard them every step of the way. I thought they were brilliant. One of the craziest things about doing all that pre-production back then is you would have to virtually recreate a lot of it when you went to a bigger studio. In fact, the album was more or less tracked twice. So let me explain. In the days of before Pro Tools, if you had a demo, you had to remake it. So now you can take your demo and just dump it, because it's all tracked in Pro Tools. So you would literally make things twice. And it leads to what I call demoitis. You chase your demo. In fact, the album was more or less tracked twice. Once to a 1-inch 8-track tape we had in our studio, and again at Chungking on a 2-inch 24-track Studer tape machine. This is often a creative process back then. It's hard to believe in today's Pro Tools home studio-friendly world, but in 1990, this is how we did things. The snap sessions we had in my basement studio were hilarious. Listen to Doom and Sub's sarcastic bickering was genius. Doom was a great artist, and his non-stop drawings of Subrock and his various nicknames associated with the drawings were ridiculous. He christened him Sub Roach in one of them, drawing Sub as a cockroach that was being stepped on by a Bigfoot that was entitled Doom. Another had him as a bread roll about to be eaten, and it was titled Sub Roll. Doom and Geeby, who was my partner, also collaborated on a few X-rated drawings on my record sleeves. Imagine pulling out a breakbeat record mid-session, and the sleeve is a cartoon of a giant penis with your name on it. Whenever I think of making Mr. Hood, I end up chuckling to myself. Mr. Hood, for all of its laborious twists and turns, is genius. It's filled with crazy vocal snippets that narrate the entire record, telling a story of a misguided youth in a material and spiritually lacking society, all with a firm tongue-in-cheek vibe, as only they could do. The band also created all the artwork for the project, which I thought was brilliant. Being around Sub and Doom was special. They had an almost ESP-like quality to their working relationship. Sub, in fact, did most of the production, which is lost on some people. Doom would often start ideas, and Sub would finish them. He was the more technical of the two brothers, and don't forget that he was only 16 years old when we started recording the first record. They're honestly some of the smartest young men I've ever had the pleasure of working with. Ironically, a lot of MF Doom fans are not even aware of Subrock or KMD. While Doom and Sub were working on Mr. Hood demos in my studio, KMD had free reign on my record collection, which is stored in the studio for the most part. What they did with a few records they borrowed from me was so outside of my way of thinking, it was mind-boggling. I was inspired by their abstract way of looking at samples. Specifically, I loved the way they used Me and Mrs. Jones, the Billy Paul classic on Figure of Speech, a predecessor to Kanye West's Chipmunk Soul vibe. I really cared less that they used my record, except for what transpired on Humrush. I showed up at Chungking to check in on a KMD session to see how the fellows were doing. When I walked in, I heard Humrush and was like, hold up, those are my drums. I have those in a beat I just made, slowed down and chopped up the exact same way. I asked Doom how he came up with them and why he slowed them down like that. Doom turned to me and said, I don't know, ask Gamble, he gave them to me. I got kind of pissed. I wondered why Gamble, who could call me to ask me for Chinese food order or what pair of kicks I was wearing that day, neglected to ask me if he could give away my drums to Doom. It was kind of tight and suggested we go for a walk and get a sandwich at the Italian Food Center on Mulberry Street, our favorite deli. Doom, being the wise ass that he was, in an effort to defuse the situation, offered to buy me lunch. This was a first in my A&R career. It's a rare thing for a rapper to do. In fact, it's never happened again. As he paid for our sandwich, he explained to me that my producer, Vance, was the lunch he had just bought me. I started cracking up, but not before I demanded a Manhattan Special soda as additional payment. To his credit, he later gave me co-production on the song, which I didn't really deserve. Every time I think of Mr. Hood, the goofy grin he had on his face when he brought me lunch pops in my head. It was just another example of how irreverent MF Doom was.
Dope.
I would have read the Black Bastards part, but it's like super long and emotional, and we all know the story. It's been told a lot of times, so.
Definitely, yeah. Love KMD. I think Peach Fuzz is probably my favorite. It's definitely up there.
That's a genius song.
It is.
And they, those guys are so clever. They were like so smart. They were in their own world. It's hard to explain, but they were like their own bubble, and they were like just so steeped in all this like cryptic stuff that was like their own language. The only other group I ever saw like that, because I didn't really work with the Wu, I worked with Dirty, but I think they were probably like it was hieroglyphics. They had their like own kind of like their own ecosystem, if you will.
Yes. Definitely. I mean, I thought it was genius to make a whole song about facial hair. A full 3 or 4 minute song. And the xylophone sample was crazy too.
Crazy. Grand Poobah playing it in the video.
Yes, definitely. So I want to go back to your inspiration for your book, Son of the City. I know you speak very highly of your father in the book. He's a very interesting man. Your mother was interesting too, and your whole coming up was interesting. Specifically, the music that played in your household, from your sister, your mother, and your brother. Talk to me a bit about. I think you said your father was also like one of the first people to get locked up for refusing to go to the war.
He's the second person in the United States to go to prison for refusing to fight in the Vietnam War. And he did a year in jail at Folsom State for it.
That's absolutely crazy. So tell me about how the music and everything else in your household coming up, how it informed you as later a producer, A&R. And I think you said in the book that you have an eye for talent. That's your thing. You can spot talent. Tell me how your coming up in your household informed all of those things.
I mean, like the music you're exposed to as a child is usually played by your parents, right? So I listen to a lot of the same music my parents were playing, specifically my mom. My mom loved soul music. She loved Aretha Franklin and Al Green and Marvin Gaye and, that's Ann Peebles and Nina Simone. So I grew up hearing all that music. Like that was like in my house all the time. She also liked like Van Morrison and Bob Dylan and some like singer-songwriter stuff. But like my parents weren't playing Led Zeppelin or anything like that. They were like, had much hipper taste in that. And my sister, she was pretty hood. Like, and she only dated Puerto Rican dudes, and she was outside like from an early age. So I listened to a lot of her music, and her music was like records like Just Begun, and like Joyous by Pleasure, and those kind of
break
records.
beats.
Yeah, exactly, all the break shit, but those were popular records, and those are the records they played outside, and when we had block parties, we had them all during the summer in my neighborhood, and you hear like Sex Machine and a lot of the classic breaks. So when hip hop like started to sample all these records, I knew all the records already. Like I knew Kissin' My Love from when I was a kid, because my mom played that, right? Because she loved Bill Withers. So, and I knew Jimmy Castor Bunch because my sister was playing that. And I knew Sex Machine because everyone knows James Brown, right? So, like, and all those records were around me. So when it moved to that era, I already knew all that shit, So, like, by 1983, we're going to hip hop clubs, 82, to Roxy and shit like that. They're playing some of those records. And so I'm like, oh shit, I already know all this shit. And it just goes on and on and on from there, And I grew up like, I always loved black music as a kid. It was always like, whether it was Parliament or Stevie Wonder, whatever it was, this was the music that was around us growing up on the Lower East Side. It wasn't like, they weren't playing like Elton John on my block a whole lot. Like my sister might have played it, but like we weren't hearing those kind of records. We heard black music. So I grew up around all the stuff that would become the sample material in the 70s.
Okay. So speaking of break beats and early hip hop, do you remember what your first encounter was with hip hop, whether it was a tape or somebody rhyming? What was it and what year?
Sugar Hill
was it?
Gang, it was 1979. It was a hit record, Rapper's Delight. Like everyone knew that record, but it was a novelty record to us.
Sure.
We didn't think it was gonna last. We had no idea, right? And I remember I thought it was super cool. I was like, shit's dope. And I went to school with this kid named Columbus Van Horn. And you could not call him Columbus. He was like, yo, my name's Jackie, yo. He was like shaving when he was like 12. But he was like my man though. He was like, me and him were tight. And he was like, yo, I'm gonna give, he had like a deep voice when he was like a kid. He was like, yo, I'm gonna give you a tape of the real shit though. And he gave me a Grandmaster Flash tape, a live tape. And I didn't want to give it back. I was just, yo, this shit's crazy. And we used to like, he was the first time, I think the first time I ever like went to Harlem. He lived in Harlem. I spent the night at his house on 131st. So he was like my really good friend. And I learned a lot. I learned about hip hop from him, but you know, hip hop like had this weird moment where it was kind of, you didn't know where it was gonna go, right? And so I kind of like, I paid attention to it, you know, I was like kind of checking it out, but I got into punk rock and all this other shit. But when we were into punk rock, like, we thought like everything was corny except punk rock, except black music, right? Like Rick James could wear all that shit and he was ill. We're like, Rick James is ill. Like, it just got to pass. So we always tuned into rap music. Like, I always think in England, they listen to dub and reggae. In New York, we were listening to rap music. We were listening to the Treacherous Three, Rock the Body, and Spoonie G, you know, the Big Beat, and all these records. These are records we were fucking with. So Love Rap, we knew all those records because they played them in the clubs side by side with the records, the new wave records, and all the shit we were listening to. So I was kind of, me and my friends were always tuned into it. And then, you know, we went to the Roxy, we went to the first thing at the Grill, we went the second week, me and Mike D, I think. We knew Ramalzi, all the graffiti dudes, Futura and all that. We all wrote graffiti and stuff. But then hip hop, like, we were into it. It was like, and a lot of cool, like, hip white people in New York were into it. And then, like, the breaks came on. It was like, "Err!" And breakdancing was like in Burger King ads. And shit kind of had, like, ran its course. And dudes were, like, kind of dressed like a broke Parliament. Like, you know, with like the 9 belts and shit. It got like kind of weird. And there was a lot of keyboards. And then Run DMC came out. You know, and that was when, for me, I was like, this is the thing. Like it spoke to me as loud as, the only thing that ever spoke to me personally that loud before was the Bad Brains. It spoke to me like that loud. I was like, Jesus Christ. Because it was anti-music.
It was.
You know, it had no melody. It was just drums and them rapping, and they were yelling.
Yeah, I had that same experience just 2 hours down the road in Virginia, you know.
We're probably around the same age. I think it's a thing for people who are like around our ages.
It is, because I fell in love with Flash, you know, more so from the records, Adventures on the Wheels of Steel, stuff like that. And then it got to a point where, with all the horns and the party track in the background, there was a time around 82 when I felt like, you know, how long
Maddie.
is this?
Yo, that's Maddie C.
That's Maddie C. Dope.
Yo, I was walking down the street wondering if you were in DC. I was like, yo, I'm in Maddie's spot.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Yo, I gotta give you a hug, man.
What's up, man? Good to see you.
Love you, my brother.
The man who received Biggie's demo tape at the Source.
Amongst other things.
Amongst other things, yes.
Gave me the handoff on Dirty. He gets the assist. He needed a player to be named later for that one. So he definitely was like, take that.
Yeah. So the record you're talking about, Sucker MCs, and it's like that. That's one of those where I remember exactly where I was when I heard it.
I do too. That's crazy you said that. I know exactly where I was. It's bugged out.
Yeah, because it was literally like a paradigm shift, like you said. There's no bass line, there's no guitar, there's no piano, and their attitude. You know, I think the only time before would have been Love Rap when Spoonie G rapped over just drums.
Yeah, exactly.
And that became a breakbeat itself. But I do remember where I was, and I demanded a copy from the person who had it. So my first copy of Sucker MCs and It's Like That was made in the street, box to box. So you can hear dogs barking.
Box to box. I love that. I used to do that too. That's crazy.
So you hear dogs barking and, you know, people walking down the street.
My
but I had
mom
to
would
have
be in the background. Turn that down.
Right. So yeah, the Run DMC was, and I saw in the book you actually said Run DMC was the start for you. Not the first thing you heard, but that was the thing that grabbed you.
See, Run DMC was the thing that was like, it's a lifestyle. You know what I mean? It was like, because they didn't dress like, look, no one dressed like Grandmaster Flash now. You were not getting on the train with 9 belts and leather pants and a raccoon coat and all that shit wasn't happening. Like, but you could dress like Run DMC because they dress like the audience, right? It was very punk rock to me.
Yeah, that was the appeal. And like those groups, they were opening up for like, barcades and Parliament, and they were landing spaceships, so it fit into that. But it did feel like, okay, this is our music because they got on the shoes I got on.
Right, exactly.
I have that jacket. So
right, exactly.
I totally agree.
They
with
dress
you.
like, like the hard rocks around your block. You're like, oh, I know a dude who looks just like that.
Exactly, with the hats.
And it was, the first time I heard it, I was fucked, man. I was in John Barry's house with Mike D and John Barry, my friends, pre-gaming, and we used to listen to the mix show. It was called the Zulu Hour. It was 1 hour, the mix show. And it was Jazzy J, and then Red Alert took it over. And we heard it on that, and it sounded like nothing else. Nothing sounded like it. It cut through all the clutter. Because there was no keyboards, right? There was no That shit wasn't in. There was just bong. And we were like, what the hell is that? And that shit, that record took over New York. It took over. They were playing both sides. That shit was massive.
Yeah.
That was like anthemic. Like every car played that shit. Was like, that was a smash from day one.
Yeah. And that was, ironically, the sound that Run DMC would pioneer and the sound that you just described was actually the sound that would go on in a hip hop party, which Rick Rubin was trying to reproduce when he did records like It's Yours and I Need a Beat. He was trying to reproduce what he heard on tapes. But moving forward a little bit, you mentioned the Beastie Boys, and I found your relationship with the Beastie Boys and that whole time period very interesting, like, performing with Madonna before she was really, really, Madonna that we came to know. So talk a bit about that, running around with, I think you say you were closer to, was it Mike D?
It vacillated, depending what year it was. I was never that type of ad rock for like just no specific reason. I just didn't hang out with him that much. He had kind of his own little vibe more. So sometimes it was Mike, sometimes it was Yauk. Later it was Yauk in life. Earlier I think it was Mike. And me and Mike had like 1 million retarded hustles. Like it's not in the book, but we decided we were going to become. We went and bought all these umbrellas for like $1 a piece, and we were going to be umbrella salesmen. When it rained, we thought we were going to go get paid, and we didn't get paid. We never went out with the umbrellas. They never. This thing keeps turning off. I don't even need it, do I? Yo, I'm gonna do the beatbox. Yeah, this shit is beat. The battery's dead on this. So it all depended, and me and Mike got in a lot of trouble because I was always in trouble. So and Mike was always with me, But they were like, it was such an interesting time because we were like the forerunners for white America's like fascination with hip hop, right? We were like, because we're from downtown Manhattan, we get it first, and we're like the children of the Keith Haringtons and the Ramal Z's and the Fab Five Freddy's and the Patty Astors. They're like one generation above us.
Yeah.
And they're cool to us. So, but we want to do our own thing, and like we go full ahead, and Run DMC is like our band, where they probably were fucking with Flash and then Busy B and whoever it was. So we had a different kind of role model, but like we're the kids who like we're like the litmus test for white America with hip hop culture kinda, and from us, and not just us, all of the downtown kind of hip people embracing it, this thing starts to spread. And I think Russell, for all of his shortcomings, he's a brilliant guy, and he saw this. He saw that like there was this thing, like he could sell this to white America, right? And I think he capitalized on that. And we were kind of like the test tube babies for it. And it's funny you mentioned Madonna, because I'm sure someone knows this, but she was a freestyle artist at first, right? So she made freestyle records, and they played her records in like freestyle clubs, the Fun House. And Russell convinced, I don't know if you guys know how the Beastie Boys went on tour with her. Her manager, Freddie DeMann, called up Russell, and he thought he managed the Fat Boys. He was like, yo, I want to get the Fat Boys on tour. It's like, oh, they're busy, but I got these kids, the Beastie Boys. And he sold them the dream. And that's how they went on tour with them. And I saw him twice open for him at Radio City Music Hall and get booed. Madonna fans was not fucking with them. And the classic shit was, though, we went to the after party, and we used to always rock the Busy Bee, Kumo D battle tape.
Oh yeah.
So they had the tape, and we had a box, and we went, and we showed up at the after party, and everyone looked at us like, what are these clowns doing here? And we walked in with the box. It was like our little posse. And Keith Haring was there. He was with baby Sean Lennon. But Keith Haring was like, yo, I love you guys. He was like mad cool to us. And I was like, he was the only guy who liked us there. Like everyone else was like, can you guys please leave? Like turn off the radio type shit. It was in the basement of Radio City. And I always thought that the fact they got booed on a whole Madonna tour is what made them, one of the things that made them great, because they really didn't give a fuck. They were like, yeah, okay, Madonna fans booed us. Good, fuck all of y'all. We're gonna be famous anyway, watch. And I think like, I always say this to every band, I'm like, someone asked me today, have you ever been on stage when it went terrible for your band? I was like, oh yeah, lots of times. But that has to happen. You gotta fall on your face at a couple of performances before you can get good. And the Beasties, like, yo, Russell was ruthless. He threw them in front of mad black audiences. Like, he was like, get out there. And dudes was like, get the fuck off stage. Like, I went to see him at Roseland, it's in the book. And these dudes came up to us, a group of dudes, and they was like, yo, that's your people up there? And I was like, gulp, like, I don't know what to say. I was like, not me, like stammered, and we were like, I was like, yo, I was in my head, I was like, they're gonna beat the shit out of us. And one of them was like, yo, your boys, your people suck. And I was like, and Say, who was smart enough to realize, because he was a little more seasoned than us, me, him, and this guy, Dave Skilkin, we all had backstage passes, sticky passes, and he was like, let's go this way. And we like made the beeline over here, because we were gonna get beat up, and they were opening at Roseland for Curtis Blow, and they really had no business probably opening for Curtis Blow. And he was doing, and it was when he was doing basketball, it was on that was like, so it was the downside of Curtis Blow, Jerry Curl Curtis with the leather suit on, like whatever year that is. And
84 probably.
84, yeah, it's the downside, it's not the breaks.
Russell was still his manager?
Well,
Russell was still his manager?
oh yeah, he was like, it was on the way out. It was like, and Curtis had on like the tight leather suit, he had a little Jerry curl. This is so fucking funky. This is a funky ass story, but it's in the book too. So he had made promotional basketballs for basketball, and he threw them out in the audience. And yo, he was on stage and someone dinged him in the side of the head with the basketball. And we see Jerry curl juice fly. It's like, shh. And that was like the end of it. Curtis like, the mic was like bonk. He like stormed off stage, and we were backstage. He was all mad and shit. And we laughed. We were like, we gotta get out of here. This is fucked up. And it was like, it was just fucking crazy. But back to the Beastie Boys, like, he sent them on tour with Run DMC. They did the run with Run DMC and Houdini, like the whole East Coast, right? And what I'd always heard, by the time they got to DC, they got good. But they played the Garden, but before they did that, they did the show at the Apollo with Run DMC. It was a fundraiser. And no one knew what they looked like. No one really knew who they were, but they knew Hold It Now. Hold It Now Hit It had just dropped, that shit was popping. And they went out and they were like, did their little thing, and people was looking at them like, I'm gonna hit you in the head with a banana like in a minute. But they did Slow and Low and had the massive big 808. And people started rocking to that shit. They was like, oh shit. People was like, oh shit. And then they segued and they started to Hold It Now Hit It. And the minute Ad Rock said, hey yo, everyone knew the song, but I don't think anyone knew they were white. I don't think people knew yet. Like, and then by the time Mike D said, I'm Mike D and I do the Jerry Lewis, yo, everyone got up and started doing the Jerry Lewis. That was a dance back then. And it was chanting, go white boys, go white boys. And I was like, right then, I was like, yo, they're gonna be fucking famous. Yeah. Like, I knew it right then. I think all of us knew it. Like, and we kind of knew they were gonna be famous anyway, because they were like there first, and they had Russell and Rick, and like all this shit was going on. But they had put out these two songs no one liked. They had put out She's On It and Rock Hard, and they didn't hit. But when they did that shit at the Apollo, and their show was so good, because they'd been out with Run and Houdini, I was like, oh yeah, they're about to be world famous. And I felt like, I was like, Run DMC was already starting to kind of hit everywhere. I was like, this is gonna be Run DMC Part 2. And it was.
Yeah, it was. It's funny you said nobody knew what they looked like, because the first record I heard was the one you mentioned, Rock Hard, but it was the Beastie Groove that got a little bit of play.
That was the one that people like better.
Flip side. You know, it was when you had pre-Columbia, when you had the Burgundy Def Jam jacket. But I thought they were Puerto Rican when I heard the Beastie Groove.
Yo, mad people would, you know what? I always think people wanted to think they were Puerto Ricans to make them feel better about themselves.
They sounded, to me, they were just so wild and outlandish in the voices. If you go back and listen to the Beastie Groove, a lot of people did. And we didn't see them, and like you said, until right around Hold It Now. And then, of course, Crest Groove, they did She's On It on Crest Groove. So interesting about Madonna with the freestyle records. I remember Jelly Bean produced a lot, and I think she was dating Jelly
Yeah, she
Bean.
was. That was her fiance.
Yes. But even the first Celebrate and
Yeah,
Holiday
those are
Celebrate.
freestyle records.
Yep, freestyle records.
They was trying to be Shannon.
Yes.
It's like let the music play. It was
Definitely
like
were.
that style.
And a lot of people don't.
Everyone thought she was Puerto Rican too. Everyone
Yes.
thought she was Puerto
Yes.
Rican. And like there was this club, like I don't know if anyone knows this, like the Roxy is, you always hear about it, and I was like fly, but there was a club after the Roxy, and it's where Run DMC made that record live at the Funhouse.
Oh, yeah.
And that was like, kind of like the freestyle club, and it was like half Guidos and half like Hard Rocks. It was a bugged out club, and it was mad big. It was like a weird ass place. Jelly Bean was the DJ there. Mm-hmm. That was like his spot. And the Funhouse was like, that's when the breaks came down, and like only like, it felt like only blue collar white dudes was fucking with rap. It wasn't like pretty anymore. It wasn't like fabulous like that.
Right.
That was like that was the weirdest moment in rap. Like it was like rap could have fell apart.
Right. Good point. Good point. All right. So chronologically, what hat came first for you? Was it the A&R hat or the producer hat?
A&R way before.
A&R.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And I didn't even really know what an A&R person was. And then I know this guy named Mark Kamens. You know Mark Kamens? Rest in peace. Mark Kamens was I always read the back of records. You did that too, probably, Matty, right? To see the credits. So I like knew who Steve Cropper was, and Al Bell, Jerry Wexler, Berry Gordy, like Creed Taylor, like all the, I was like, I want to be like one of them, but I didn't really know what that was. Like, what do they really do? And Mark Kamens, I used to sell, this is the craziest. I used to sell, Freddie Bastone reminded me of this yesterday. I used to sell Frozone in front of Tower Records. Before Ricky inherited that job from me too, I think. I stole his job, he stole that job, something. So that was my job. And Mark Kamens mixed, I think, Rock Hard or one of those BC records. He was friends with us. He worked at Island Records. He's the guy who signed Madonna. But he used to come down to my Frozone stand and smoke weed with me every day. He'd be like, yo, I got a joint. And he'd sit there and I'd give him Frozone. And he told me one day, like, yo, you would be a good A&R kid. You'd be a good A&R scout. And I was like, really? What's that? And he was like, oh, you're always out, you know all the songs. Like, you'd be like, and I started thinking, maybe I could be an A&R guy. And then I got the job working for Russell Rick, and not Rick. Rick was always, by the time I worked at Rush, Rick was kind of out the door. He had done Slayer. Mm-hmm. Him and the Beasties weren't really tight. There was shit going on, and he was distant. He was in this bubble with this guy, George Draculius. He was like doing a cult record. He was like in some other headspace. But I would hang out with Russell a lot. Don't hold it against me. He was funny then. And we would go to Nell's. It was me, him, Andre Harrell, rest in peace, wow. Jimmy Jenkins, Jim Love, like that whole crew of guys, like Nelson George. And I would like hang out with them kind of. I would go with my friends, but I had to always check in with them. So sit at the table. I might get some free French fries. And they would ask me what records was popping, because I was going to Latin Quarters. And they were not going to Latin Quarters, because Latin Quarters they were already aspirational guys. They're living a lifestyle. They can't go into Latin Quarters. They're famous. They're brand name. They go to Latin Quarters, they have a problem. Not only that, they would be the oldest motherfuckers there, like without a doubt. So they would always ask me, what record's popping? What's popping? What's popping? And I remember clearly when they put out the Run DMC Adidas, I was like, I don't want those shits. I was like, I ain't fucking with those. Right. And I remember I was like, BDP's taking shots at Run DMC. Like, the hottest record in the club is South Bronx. And I would always tell them about all the records. And then they started telling me, yo, you would be a good A&R guy. And I was like, give me a job. I'm a messenger. Make me an A&R guy. And Monica Lynch, Daddy-O from Stetsasonic, my OG, Uncle Daddy-O, they tried to hire him at Tommy Boy. And he was like, yo, they're hiring an A&R dude at Tommy Boy. I told him they should call you. So Monica Lynch hung out with me. Yo, what up? She came to see me. No, she set up a lunch with me. And we, think we went to Blimpies. Some mad cheap Burger King or some it was whatever. And she started talking about getting a job. We went back to the office and she played me De La Soul's demo too. And I was like, yo, what the hell? And then she was like, yeah, this is like this thing we're signing and da-da-da-da. And she was like, so, I want to keep talking about the job. And she was like, let's set up a second interview. I want you to meet Tom. I never met Tom till afterwards. I went and saw her right before Christmas. And she was like, so, you have a job. And I was like, yeah, I know, I have a job at Rush. She's like, no, you have a job here if you want it. And I was like, I want it. And she was like, and that band I played you, De La Soul, that's gonna be the first artist you work with. And I was like, for real? And I remember thinking that it sounded like the stepchild of Ultramagnetic and Slick Rick. Because it was so different and creative. Some reminded me of Slick Rick, the playfulness, and then the fact it had the crazy drums in it, the Manziel drums. I was like, yo, wow, that's crazy. So, I don't know, that's what I thought. And she was like, you know Prince Paul, don't you? I was like, yeah, he's my friend. So I got the job, and that was the first thing I did.
Well, let me backtrack a little bit. For those that'll be watching later, and those here who might not know, A&R is artist and repertoire. Well, what is the everyday job of a A&R person? What was it at that time?
Well, two things. Now it means analytics and research, because dudes is just looking at numbers.
Right, YouTube shit, right.
Just streaming numbers has very little to do with finding talent.
Certainly.
And my man right there, Matty, that's one of the greatest A&Rs of all time. You know, he signed Wu-Tang, and he did everything. Like he's one of the guys. Him and Diddy are the guys I always say are the best. You know, me and you, we always have this combo, because that's my man. So before I digress, A&R, like, you know, so you find talent, right? That's the real basis of it. And I think most people who are really fanatical about music can find talent. I don't think that that's that hard to do. I think it's a very overrated title in a sense. But you also have to put all the credits together, set up all the studio sessions, try to make sure that people get there, get all the publishing information, set up the mastering, pick the singles, which is always the hardest part of all of it to me, because you end up usually liking the last couple of records the most, because they're the most fresh in your mind. And then you might have to argue with the group about what the single is, and you have to turn the whole thing in and do all the paperwork stuff. And for me, that was always the hardest part of all of it.
Let me ask you something I always wondered, just as a person who used to send tapes to record companies. And it would be considered unsolicited because we didn't have a lawyer or a company representing us.
Right.
Did anybody actually ever listen to tapes that would come in?
Yo, I have a crazy story about that. It's funny you said that. So I would get, literally, like by the time I was at Elektra, I would get like 100 demos a week. You two, you know what it is. I would have a box. I had a big box, and they would just come in and dump them in. And I would only time I listened to shit was like on a random, if I was like maybe stoned, I'm like, I'm gonna go through the demos. But I would always gravitate towards the ones that popped out visually, whichever ones looked the best. So I seen this one tape and it said The Wild Seeds. And it was graffiti, it was dope. And I was like, yo, this shit's dope. And I pulled it out and I listened to it, it was pretty good. And it had like a number on it, like somewhere in the Midwest, like I didn't recognize the area code. And I called up the number and I was like, yo, is The Wild Seeds here? And they were like, there's no Wild Seeds here, click. And I called back one other time, I gave up. I was like, so fast forward 20 years, I became friends with Atmosphere. It was Atmosphere's man, Ant, who does all the production in Atmosphere. It was his group. He said to me, yo, let me ask you a question. I sent my demo to Elektra Records in 1992. My group is called The Wild Seeds. Did you ever get it? And I was like, yo, that's the only demo I ever liked that someone solicited.
It's crazy.
It's the only time. And I was like, you wrote graffiti? He's like, yeah, I did a lot of Atmosphere logos and all that. That was bugged me out.
That is absolutely crazy.
That freaked me out. I was like, yo, that's so crazy. It makes sense too when I think about it in a weird way.
Well, if you imagine all the people who, the good demos you might have missed, like LL always talks about sending his demo to Sugar Hill and everywhere.
Ad Rock found the demo.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he was like in Rick's shit. He was just listening to shit. He was like, I'm just listening to shit. He, look, I would listen to demos and laugh. Like I'd be like, and I would, if I got a really atrocious one, I'd like save it. And I'd be like, yo, this one was sick. And we would even have battles like, yo, who got the worst demo?
Oh,
like,
wow.
Yo, I got the crazy one. So, that was like part of it, but I didn't really ever get good demos, and I never really found talent that way, undiscovered. It was usually from like an artist or a producer, someone I knew. It's still kind of like that in a way.
Got you. So I've talked to Monica before. She said that, she hired you to, of course, work with De La and to oversee the recording, of, like you said, going from the demo to the actual finished product. As a part of overseeing it, what did that entail, overseeing?
So I say this all the time, God bless De La and Prince Paul for just letting me be in the room when they, were creating all that genius. That's not I didn't really do a lot. I had good jokes, I could go to the store and get French fries at McDonald's. We liked each other's company. We like, I set up the stuff. But like that genius of that record, it's like I could never take any credit for it. That's those guys entirely. What I did do is, my two contributions were, I gave Paz the drums for I Know.
Wow.
Because my mother had the Lee Dorsey Greatest Hits record, and when she moved to Rhode Island, she gave me all the records. And I used to love the song when I was a kid called Ya Ya. The Ya Ya song, you know that song? It's like, sitting on my Ya Ya, waiting for my mama. I used to like it when I was a little kid. It's like a kid's song. But that Get Out of My Life Woman's on that Greatest Hits record. So I'll listen to it. I was like, oh shit, this break is crazy. So there's another version by Solomon Burke that's on the breakbeats. This is the other one. So I used to have this bag of records. It was like a purple bag. It was like your grandma's bag. I bring it to the studio every day with like 26 records in it. Yo, I got some breaks. And they're like, shut up. and then Paz, one morning, he called me before the studio and he was like, yo, bring your corny bag of records today. And I brought him and he was like, yo, give me that Lee Dorsey, because I would always play that. And he used the Lee Dorsey. And I had the Otis Redding record in the same bag. And he used the Otis Redding Greatest Hits, the whistle from Happy Song. So that's how he did everything. He did it all though on the S900. And I also had lent him The Baby Let Me Hold You by the Detroit Emeralds.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and we called it the Easy E record because he used it first. And I was the down. So he was like, yo, bring me Easy E.
Water?
Yeah, it's Treadwater, yeah. He was like, bring me Easy E joint. So I just brought that shit.
It's absolutely crazy. I mean, listening to that album, I always credit it as one of the first albums to really have skits. I think a Fat Boys album had some skits on it, but that one had skits.
But they were like really good skits.
They were really like set up like a game show, and then Take It Off, all of those.
And that whole shit was so cool because they used so many like records. Like it was like Jesus Christ. It was like the first kitchen sink album.
Yeah.
Right. It's like really Paul's Boutique before Paul's Boutique. It's like everything.
And I always say that. Like I remember back when like Mantronic would put an album out and it would have 3 songs on one side and 3 on the other, and 2 of them had been released already. So you might have got 2 new songs. De La to me was the beginning of getting 20 songs, and then everybody started putting out longer, and then you had to press up 2 pieces of vinyl.
That's my one complaint with the De La record. It wasn't loud.
Yep.
It had too many songs. It ran too long. And we didn't have direct metal mastering. We didn't know about putting out 2 pieces of vinyl for promo. So the mixes always sounded mad low.
When CDs were first coming out, though?
Nah, CDs wasn't out yet. They came out a couple years later.
89, right?
Yeah, they might have been out. Like the long box might have been out, but
Maybe.
nobody really had a CD player like talking about it.
That's what allowed the format to be longer.
Well, it was, yeah, maybe. You might be right. But it's like Public Enemy was the first one hip enough to do 2 pieces of vinyl, promo vinyl.
Yeah.
And Chuck had hit me to what's called direct metal mastering, DMM, and you could hit harder. You ran longer. You run 24 minutes aside instead of 1918.
Right.
So you got more bass. So Chuck was like, yo, this is what you need to do. Because he did it on Fear of a Black Planet. He's the one who hit me.
They reissued that for DJs only. Now, for people who are...
And I stole the idea from the DJs only at Elektra because they would say A-list DJs only with a fake stamp, and I put that shit on everything.
That's dope.
Try and gas people.
That's dope.
Like you're mad special, you and 700 other dudes.
Exactly. That's dope. So for people that are watching this later on, and like I said, now that may not know, the more information or songs you put on a record, the lower it's going to be in volume.
And less bass. Specifically.
So that's why when Isaac Hayes put out, he always had 4 songs, because his songs was like...
Oh, I never knew why I did that. That's crazy. I didn't know that. That's bugged out.
What's that?
That he only had that many songs so his shit would sound loud.
Yeah, like when they sample his shit for Black Steel and Our Chaos, they didn't have to do much to it because that song, the dun dun dun, all of those piano songs he did that got sampled, they sounded good because even though his songs would have been 8 minutes apiece, still.
But he only had a couple of songs for
only 4 songs,
yeah,
so his albums always sounded good.
He got like 11 minutes by the time I get the Phoenix
there
joint.
You go. Yeah. So those records always sounded good, and then I guess 45s didn't sound bad either because it's just one.
Well, what they, and also like the 12-inch single sounded good, and that was an accident how that happened, because they didn't have any 45 blanks. So Tom Moulton cut it on a 12, but it wasn't enough groove, so he doubled the breakup for "Girl You Need a Change of Heart" by Eddie Kendricks.
Wow.
And that's the first 12-inch ever made. And he was a DJ, like in gay clubs, so he took it to Fire Island, and people went fucking crazy. So he came back and he said, "Yo, people love this." And then he told the Motown dude, the A&R guy, I think it was Ernie Pugh, and he was like, a word? And they were like, and they pressed it as a 12, and they sent it to all the like dance clubs in New York. It became a classic. It was like all the accident.
Yeah, that's dope. Let me ask, this is a random question, but when I read the book, I wondered it. I don't think you talked about it. You talked about Roseland. Mm-hmm. You got sliced in the back at some point.
I got sliced in the back of Roseland.
And you didn't know it.
At a freestyle show, and I didn't know it. I was at a freestyle show. My girl was in a freestyle band called Seduction.
Oh wow.
And I was trying to be a fly guy. I think I had like a polka dot shirt on. Don't hold it against me. And I had like a flat top, like I was like trying to be mad cool. And a fight broke out, and I didn't even know I got sliced. I went backstage, and someone was like, "Yo, your back's bleeding. You got a big cut in your shit." And I still have a scar like this big on my back. Wow. I just got sliced for no reason. I was just like walking by with the polka.
Yeah,
I mean,
place.
don't wear a polka dot shirt, right?
Yeah. I mean, So that's funny. You're credited for doing something with Latifah at Tommy Boy. What did you?
I signed her.
You signed Latifah.
Yeah, I signed Latifah. I signed her. 45 King. You know, he was killing it on Red Alert with the promos. Like it was like all these. You know, he had the Giving Up Food for Funk promo.
Oh, yeah.
He had the Cuts Got Flavor with Latifah. He had joints like
Wild Pitch.
And it would always be like Red Alert would be like, "Oh, 45 King special," and then he just played the beat. And so I was like, "Yo, who is this guy?" And I was in Latin Quarters, and some dude walked up, and he was like, first off, he looked like a janitor. He didn't look like he should be in Latin Quarters. He wasn't dressed like a hip hop dude really. He wasn't like thugged out. And he had big headphones on. Like this is when no one had big headphones. He was walking around big ass headphones on and shit. I was like, who is this dude? And he was like, "Yo, are you Dante Ross?" And I was like, "Maybe." And he was like, "Yo, I'm a 45 King." I was like, "Yo, you're supposed to be like 6'5". Like, so he was like, "Yo, you want to hear some joints?" I was like, "Fuck yeah." So we go up to Red. I could always go up to the VIP in Latin Quarters and go to buy Red's booth. And it was like, he had the booth, and it was like a green room, which was like half of a like lunch cafeteria room and like a holding pen at Rikers Island. It was like completely fucked up with all this fucked up furniture. And he pulled out a Walkman, and he had a label, you know about the label guns? Shit said, "Property of the 45 King."
Oh, dope.
And I was like, this guy's wild. And he played me some joints. And I put on his headphones, and they were wet. They were soggy. I was dumb tight. I was like, yo, this fucking guy. I always remember that, because like I've DJ'd like a million times since then. If you put on someone else's headphones and they're wet, you're always like, fuck did I do? And it was like maybe the first time it ever happened to me. So I never forget that. But he played me mad shit. And I was like, Jesus fucking Christ. And I said, yo, come see me. Come to my office on Monday. Bring the whole flavor unit. And he was like, yeah. So on Monday, of course, he didn't come to my office. He called me with Fat Five Freddy, and they played me Latifah over. I had a speakerphone in my office. I thought I was super ill. I was like, yo, check out my speakerphone. And he played Wrath of My Madness on the speakerphone. That shit sounded good. I was like, God damn. When you come to my office? He said, I'm gonna come on Wednesday. It was a Monday. And he came, and Fat Five wasn't with him, which is weird. I never knew why. He brought the whole, like, almost the whole flavor room. Lakim Shabazz, Latifah, who I already knew.
Chill Rob G.
Marky Fresh. No Chill Rob bass. I mean, Chill Rob G.
Right.
No, Patchy wasn't there either. Double J was there, his man Double J.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace. No, Tresh wasn't even on yet. He wasn't even around yet.
They were messing with Sugar Hill, probably.
Yeah, he was in his own thing. And 45 King, and I was like, yo, play the girl. And Latifah, of course. And she walked in though, and I knew it was her, and she was like, looked like $1 million. She had the door knockers and the floppy socks. She had some gym shorts on. She was a high school basketball player. She just had mad style. I was like, look at her. She had the dashiki on with basketball shorts. Dope. I was like, yo, she's ill. I was like, she got it. You know, and they played me the joint, and Monica came in the conference room. She said, Dante, come in my office. And I went in the office, she says, we have to sign that girl. I said, I'm already there. And we did the deal. We ended up signing her pretty quick. It was a really easy deal to do. Because he wanted to be on Tommy, you know, he wanted to do business with us. So, because he was doing everything in Wild Pitch and he was never getting paid. Right. I don't think he got paid at Tommy Boy either. He got taken the blimpies probably. But instead of his advance for the record, this is the craziest story. He said, yo, can you just take my advance and set up a PO for me at Sam Ash? And I was like, yeah. He's like, yo, we set it up. He was like, he wanted to go get an S900 instead of his money. It was $1,100 or $1,200. And his advance was 15. And we set up the PO, and when I got the S900, and I took it on the bus to East Orange, New Jersey, to his house. He set it up in his studio that day. And I thought it was always so ill that instead of getting his check, he wanted the S900.
Yeah.
I was bugged out. And then I went to his house a couple months later. He's like, yo, I got 2 of them now.
Crazy. Yeah. Shout out 45 King.
45 King is a genius.
Yeah.
Yo, he's a super slept on genius.
He is. And he used to be record boy for Brothers Disco or Red Alert.
Not Red Alert. It was some dudes in the Bronx.
Yeah, it might have been Brothers Disco.
Yeah.
It might have been chill out. But they both were record boys in the beginning. So shout out to both of them.
He also used to work with homeboy Rock Bound Skate Vaughn Mason. Before he came out.
That's right. Rest in peace, Vaughn Mason. So, yeah, 45 King definitely. And that first single, Princess of the Posse.
He played the keyboards on that too. I seen him do it.
Wow.
He played that.
Dude. This is Bonnie Miller, I think.
Yeah, he's playing
That's
that little
crazy.
keyboard joint. He had the little chord.
Yeah. And Wrath of My Madness was on the flip side.
Yeah,
incredible 12-inch.
That 12-inch shoe. So like I have a history with Red Alert. When I worked at Rush, I gave Red Alert Rebel Without a Pause. So they knew I was going to the quarters that night, and they had the test pressings. And Hank was like, "Yo, take these to Red." And I took it to Red Alert. Yo, this is the craziest fucking story. Red Alert. I get there early because I want to make sure I get him the record. So no one's really in there yet. So he's just playing warm-up music, like R&B shit, right? Like that's how you warm it up. Maybe a little dance hall joint, you know? And he puts it on, he's listening to his headphones, he's like, I'm fucking with this. Because he was already playing Public Enemy #1, he always played it. So I thought, he's like, I'm gonna rock this. So I thought that man's gonna rock it like down the line. But he played that shit in prime time that night. And when it first came on, with the yo, everyone froze. That shit froze for like 30 seconds. She was like, and then when the fucking horns dropped and the drums, yo, people went fucking crazy. I was like, I thought someone was getting beat up. I was like, oh, someone's getting beat up.
Incredible.
It's one of those.
It's funny, I was just looking at the episode of Soul Train recently when they did that song.
I remember that, yeah.
When it was over, Don Cornelius
Yeah,
said,
Don Cornelius' face was crazy.
frightening.
Yeah, his face was like,
yeah.
I remember, he looked like he's seen a ghost. I remember that.
Yeah.
That's funny, I forgot about that.
Incredible record, man. I remember Chuck telling me that they made that record because they had, when they put out Yo Bum Rush the Show, they said to them it sounded dated.
Yeah,
because
because they had done it and Flavor was locked up. They couldn't put it out for 6 months. That's entirely true. And to get back to Red Alert, so I gave him that. Sure. So I had a good track record with Red, right? So Red was fucking with me. So I sent him De La. They were like, yo, get to see your man Red. So I was like an A&R guy, but I was like doubling his promo, I guess. Red's my man. Let's hang out with him. So I sent it to Red over to his house on the 13th Adam Clay Powell, and he's called me up that day too. Yo, I like this. Played it that day on the mix show. So then when I sent him Wrath of My Madness, he's always playing 45 King. I knew he was gonna play it.
Yeah.
Like we just gave, he played it right away. And we put it out during the New Music Seminar, and by the start of the New Music Seminar, by the end of the week, that shit was a hit record. That shit was a hit record in like a week. Like it was like everywhere in New York, both sides.
Wow, yeah, that was an incredible record.
To me, still my favorite thing she ever did, I think.
Yeah, it's mine too. Yeah, Wrath of My Madness.
And that's another one. I'm telling you about the records I knew. So my pops would play the meters. So I knew the meters. I didn't know what song it was. I was like, oh, that's the meters.
Right.
Because they have that identifiable sound.
Yes, 100%. So for Rebel Without a Pause, I know Chuck said that when they heard I Know You Got Soul by Eric B. and Rakim,
100%.
They were so taken by that record, they went in the studio, regrouped, because that came out between Yo Bum Rush the Show and Nation of Millions. And that's why we got Rebel Without a Pause, because they were so, Chuck said it's inconceivable that anybody could make a record.
Yeah, because it was like, you have to remember, things were moving at light speed, right? So they went from Paid in Full to, the next joint.
Yeah.
Bong. And it's like, I Know You Got Soul, it's fast, and it's got the Bobby Bird sample and the whole, it was like the evolution was so crazy. It was that and Ultramagnetic used the Rebel shit first for Ease Back. They had the same shit first. And I know that Hank and them, they were definitely listening to Ultramagnetic. So Ultramagnetic was so far ahead of everybody. They were too far ahead.
They were.
They missed the they were like too advanced. There was like this, someone got to take the bullet, right? Someone catches the bullet so the next guy gets through. That's Ultramagnetic. Because to me, and like DJ Muggs, one of my really good friends, Cypress Hill's whole shit is based on Ultramagnetic, and he will tell you that.
Yeah, yeah. When I heard Ego Trippin', which I know they made promos and other stuff before, but Ego Trippin', that was my first time hearing synthetic.
I've seen people get beat up when that record came on. Yeah. Latin Quarters, there's like a couple of records, the biggest Latin Quarters records, that's one of the top 3.
Yeah, Ghost Stetzer, one.
Ghost South Bronx.
Yeah.
And the other one is PSK.
Yep.
You know, I used to say those are gold chain snatching records.
Yes.
Like you put on with some motherfuckers.
Certainly.
Yo, that shit came on, you tucked your chain.
Certainly. Something about that chant of go Brooklyn.
Oh man. Well, that was also because Brooklyn dudes were in there and they had beef with everybody.
Yeah.
So when that came on, it was like a war chant. It's about to go.
I call it that, a war chant.
It just was like, let's go, it's about to happen. See, I was really lucky. All I owned was a Swatch and a bucket hat back then, so no one could take anything from me. You get my Air Forces, but you had nicer ones than me, so.
There you go.
Latin Quarters, it paid to be broke to be in there.
There you go. Now, let me get the chronologically. Let me get it straight. So, Queen Latifah drops before Daylight, right?
No, after.
So Plug
Tuning was already out.
And then
And then Wrath of My Madness, and then Potholes in My Lawn.
Wow. Okay. I remember their breaks were so unique and eclectic that for.
De La is the first group to sample white pop groups, like Hall & Oates and Steely Dan.
Yeah.
And they did that because we grew up, like, I don't know who's from New York here, but we had a radio station called WABC.
Yeah.
And Red Alert's the one who pointed this out to me, like, maybe 10, 15 years ago. He was like, yeah, we all grew up listening to WABC. That's why we liked Steve Miller Band, Fly Like an Eagle, because that's a W, and they played that shit, and then they're playing, right after that, you might hear The Big Payback, or Talking Book, Superstition by Stevie Wonder, and then maybe Electric Light Orchestra. It was like an open format, so whatever was a pop record. So we grew up listening to Casey and the Sunshine Band and ABBA, like it was just like some bizarre shit.
Yeah. All the first generation groups, like the Furious Five, Grandmaster Caz of the Cold Crush Brothers, those routines that he made that were based on
based on a lot of rock records.
Because he listened to WABC.
100%, 100%.
Certainly. So for Plug Tuner, I remember that.
That's why they used the Brass Monkey joint.
Yeah.
That's like it's one of those records.
Exactly. I remember Flash spinning that one on old tapes. Yep. Exactly. So for Plug Tuning, that break was such a rare one. I distinctly remember there was a contest, and I'm pretty sure it was put on by Tommy Boy. If you could guess what that break was, you win something. I don't know, a free record or money, but
yeah, it was Dave, rest in peace. It's his father's record.
Yeah.
It's called It's Written on the Wall, right?
You're Written on the Wall. Yeah.
Yeah. Who's the group? I always forget.
I forgot the name of the group, but
the Intruders or the Invincibles?
It might have been the Invincibles or something.
Yeah,
like
it's
that.
not the Intruders. It's
not the Intruders.
I always loved My Mama.
Yeah.
That was like a rare record. Like I didn't know, no one knew that record. I didn't know that record.
I mean, really, the internet age is what told us.
Yeah,
there's people who still find out by going to
that's
YouTube.
a hard record to find.
Yeah.
Like I've never seen it.
Yeah, that break was incredible. Plug Tuning was.
And Dave got it from his pops. That was his pops' record. And his pops is like a Haitian dude who likes old soul records, doo-wop records.
Incredible. Now, the atmosphere while recording 3 Feet High, it just sounded like those guys just sat around and played the dozens and acted like fools all the time.
We had mad fun. It was like fun. It was like
it
was like just hanging out, just bugging out.
Dante the Scrub and
and I'm like I called Mace Baby Huey.
Right.
I was like he's Baby Huey, and it just was nonstop.
Yeah.
All we did was make fun of each other.
And even like a song like Take It Off, some of the stuff they said to take off, like you might have had it. Like
100%.
DVD shirts ain't really that old. He said take off the DVD shirt,
It was more of a cultural statement.
Certainly.
And you remember I'm saying like hip hop like went light speed ahead really quick, like jump all these years in a couple of years.
Yeah.
So Run DMC went from like being the coolest shit in the world
to take those shelters off.
Thank you. It was like, nah, and for me, like, cause I was super tight with, like, I know Run DMC, I knew them, like, they were my idols. Mm-hmm. I couldn't believe that Jay was only 1 year older than me when I started hanging out with him.
Certainly.
I was like, wait, you're only 1 year older than me? Like, cause he physically looked like a grown man, and he had all this money, and like a nice car and all. I was like, yo, this guy. So, but they were only a couple years. Prince Paul's my age, so he's 1 year younger than Jay too. But like culturally, we were so in a different place than them dudes. We were like, it was a whole different thing. And when I met De La, they bugged me out because they're from Long Island. I'm from downtown Manhattan, but we dressed the same. And I was like, I thought dudes in Long Island were like in the Stone Age. Like I didn't understand. I didn't know you could be cool from Long Island. Right. right? Because that's the suburbs. My idea of Long Island, we call dudes from Long Island Momacs, because they're from Comac or fucking Fomac, whatever Long Island. It was always like white dudes in like acid wash jeans. I didn't even know. I really didn't know black people lived in Long Island until I met Rakim, honestly. Like I didn't even know. I was like, oh shit, wait, it's not just like white people with feathered hair, because it's the suburbs, you know? It's so different to me.
Certainly. All right, so you you went from Def Jam to Tommy Boy.
Yes.
Then Elektra.
Yes.
Anything else on Def Jam? I mean, it's good enough that you gave us.
I mean, I worked at
Daylight
Rush. I didn't
Latino,
really
but-
work at Def Jam either, just so you know, I worked at Rush. But the
Right,
one thing I
Rush.
did at Rush, and I kind of did it when I worked at Tommy Boy, was I helped make Third Base a group. There were two separate
Talk
group
about that,
guys,
yeah.
and me and Sam Sever were like, you guys should be a group, because they were both kind of in struggle mode. Search had a demo, a 4-song demo that Leor paid for while I worked at Rush. I convinced him to do it, and he was $5,000 in the hole. And for like months, he'd be like, you stupid motherfucker. I gave him $4,000. And he couldn't get him a record deal. No one would sign him. And then him and Pete got together and they changed the name. It was originally Three the Hard Way.
Right.
And someone had the name, they became Third Base. And I took him to Tommy Boy, and Monica wouldn't sign him. They wouldn't sign him. And I was like, word? We could have had him for $30,000.
Was there any particular thing about?
She
them
just
two?
didn't like, they wasn't for them. They wasn't ready to do that, and they didn't sign them. And then they sat on the shelf. A&M passed on them. Matter of fact, I went to Elektra, and they had not gotten signed yet. And I wanted to sign them, and then Raul Roach, my boss, was like, yo, the first group you signed probably shouldn't be Third Base. And I was like, you're probably right. It probably would have been a culturally awkward statement to make.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I didn't sign them. And they ended up being on Def Jam, and you know, they sold a lot of records. So then I went to Elektra, and it's easing into that. And I went to Elektra. This story about your friend Tim Carr. He's the reason I went to Elektra Records. I don't know if you know this. So Tim Carr, rest in peace. He stole the Beastie Boys like a thief in the night from Def Jam. He's this guy who signed Megadeth. He's like a rock and roll guy, but he's like a super cool dude. So I think Tim wanted to like buy in deeper into Beastie. So he took me to lunch, and it wasn't at Blimpies. It was like El Madre or somewhere. It was like some super nice shit. I was like, yo, they got breadsticks. This is, you know, it was some shit. And he, so Dante, what do you think about Capitol Records? And I said, I don't know. It's something, whatever, you know, it's a thing. And I just saw Mantronics. I was like, you probably shouldn't have done that. And then he goes, would you consider working with me at Capitol Records? And I said, maybe. And he goes, I could pay you $60,000 a year. And I said, $60,000? And he goes, I could do 65. And I said, oh shit. And then that's when I realized I needed to get a new job. I asked Russell, I said, yo, I make $30,000 a year. I got offered 60. What should I do? He said, yo, don't even ask me, you stupid ass. He said, but you can work at Def Jam for 45. And I was like, I'm good. And I was gonna work for Tim. I called my lawyer, and he told me, you probably don't want to work at Capitol. I said, why? He said, I don't know how long Tim's going to be there. He literally said that to me. Tim got fired not that long after, because he put out Paul's Boutique, and they walked him out of the door with security and told me you have made Capitol Records a laughing stock. So I went, my lawyer set up meetings with me. I went to meet this guy, Bob Krasnow, who ran Elektra Records. He had a huge diamond ring on, and I had a 3-finger ring on, Canal Street Special. And he was like, I like that ring. And I took it off. I said, yeah, let me see yours. And we traded rings. And I was like, yo, you want to trade? He's like, I don't think so, kid. And he took his ring back. And then he had like, started asking about me, what kind of music do you like besides rap music? And I said, I like all kinds of stuff. He said, I just signed this band called the Pixies. Do you know about them? I said, that's like the only rock band I like. That's a 3-band, them and Dinosaur Jr. were like the only bands I liked probably then. And I was like, yo, that's super cool. And he's like, yeah, I signed Anita Baker. I was like, you signed Anita Baker? And you signed the Pixies? And he was like, yeah, I signed George Clinton. I was his A&R guy for 20 years or something. And I was like, yo, this guy's cool. So we left the meeting, and my lawyer said, well, that went well. He'll pay you as much as you probably want. I said, $75,000? He said, definitely. But he's a lot like you, hot and cold. He might like you today, he might hate you tomorrow. And I was like, I thought about it. Oh, I forgot this. He played me Tracy Chapman before it came out.
Oh, wow.
He played me Fast Cars.
Wow.
I was like, what the hell? And then he told me she was black because it was a test pressing.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the fuck? I was like, that's going to be a hit record. He's like, yes, it is. And I took the job. I liked him. Something about him was he was a cool ass cat. I took the job. I liked the style.
Let me rewind a little bit. You talked about Paul's Boutique. In the book, you called that, well, you said it was your favorite album by them.
And there's a famous thing, so this became like, she knows them really well. So they have all this like folklore that involves their friends and all this shit that's like, it's all inside jokes, a lot of inside baseball. So supposedly when they played me the record, I don't remember, so I said, yo, it's pretty good. You got like 2 songs on it. I mean, like you have 2 singles. They might have had 1 single, let's be real. It's a very cosmic record. And so that's in the book, and they would always say with every record, they're like, it's pretty good, it's got 2 songs on it. So it became like an inside joke forever amongst all of us. And I remember I went to see them when they were making the record, and they had a ping pong table set up in the live room. And I was like, this is what happens when you hit the big time, huh? I was like, shit, this is different, because I'm making records in like Calliope and these fucked up little studios. I was like, this is fucking bugged out. And that record to me is like a lot like 3 Feet High and Rising. Right? And I always said that with there's so many parallels between those 2 bands. Both have a member who's my friend who died. They both made these like crazy sample-delic records. And they also both had second records where they like almost lost the plot, where it almost ended for them. So Paul's Boutique doesn't happen. And if De La Soul is Dead doesn't happen, they don't go on to do all the great shit they did because they found artistic freedom in failure. Right? And De La Soul's failure was self-imposed, I believe. I mean, how do you market a record? I would have loved to see Tom's face when he said, our record's called De La Soul is Dead. How do you sell that?
Right.
You know, like, how do you sell that? And the Beasties record was like, you know, they got paid so much money, and Donny Osmond came out the same week, and they kicked that shit. Supposedly, the head of the label, who I used to work with, his name was Hale Milgram, and I used to call him Pale Pilgrim. He was a fucking asshole, and supposedly he told them, well, this one's not gonna happen, and Donny Osmond's coming out next week, so go start making another one. He got fired, so he got fired everywhere.
Other than the fact, and we may have already answered it, but other than the fact that it only had 2, I think the first single was Shake Your Rump or something like that.
Hey Ladies.
Hey Ladies, there you go.
It was like a double joint.
Yeah, exactly. And then, you know, it wasn't really singles driven like, you know, previous.
That shit sounded like the inside of a bomb. That was just like the highest sounding record you ever. It was so stoned out.
Right, and do you attribute that to the fact that it was, because it's revered as a classic now, of course. Like now it's like, oh, it's brilliant. You know, all these samples, you know, contests to see who can guess the samples. But why do you think it bombed, not just commercially, but just
there was no Fight for Your Right to Party. You know, they'd have frat boy records. You know, and they had become something they didn't want to be. Like, you know, they were like, yo, we don't want to be that bullshit. Like, this shit's whack. Right? And you can tell, like, Fight for Your Right to Party, that's a Rick Rubin record. That's not like a Beastie Boys record.
Right.
That's like, you can hear Rick's influence,
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
Like, they're more like Slow and Low, Paul Revere. That's like more them. So I think that's what they were trying to like, yo, we're not doing that shit anymore. You know, it's like, it's similar to De La. Like, we're gonna kill what you think we are, and we're gonna have, I don't think either of them intended to like fail and have like all this artistic freedom, but that was the end result.
Right. But I love De La Soul is Dead. I thought that was
That shit's
incredible.
incredible. It's
yeah,
incredible.
The samples on there.
Yeah, so the whole record is great.
Yeah, it is. And the skits,
And it sounds better than the first one. It's mixed better and all that.
Oh, 100%. So sliding into Elektra, what's the first thing who's the first?
So I made a Frisbee with this girl Shazzy who threw that shit. I was like, get that out of here. That was a fucking tanker. But I thought I was gonna get fired, but it ended up on Robert Christgau's 10 best records of the year. He was like the biggest critic in the world. And it showed me what a fucking idiot critics are, because it was fucking not a good record.
She had a full album, right? With like, I was on a song called Jiggaho or something.
That was on the second album.
Okay.
No, I was on our record. That was on our record, yeah, because I used Skull Snaps, and everyone's like, yo, you used Skull Snaps first? I was like, Beatnuts used it first. I didn't use it first. I was like 5th, but I used it early on.
Right.
So whatever, the record was forgettable, very unmemorable.
Yeah.
But because him and this guy, John Perales, another critic, they both loved it. For reasons unknown, I got to keep my job.
Okay.
And then I was signed Brand Nubian. I was gonna sign Brand Nubian to Tommy Boy, and I told him, wait up, I'm gonna bring you with me. I signed Brand Nubian, and then the struggle began.
Okay, so now I remember, I distinctly remember everybody loving Brand Nubian, everybody loving Pooh Bah from Masters of Ceremony.
That's why I signed him.
Okay, Masters of
Yeah, because he
Ceremony.
brought me a song called Ain't Going Out Like That to Tommy Boy, and I wanted to sign him to Tommy Boy. But then I knew I was going to leave, and I was like, yo, if you hold up, I'll double the deal you would get here.
Okay.
So, and Pooh-Bah being Pooh-Bah, I was like, yo, hell yeah. So he waited, and we ended up signing him.
Because I distinctly remember
The first single was a flop, too.
that was the one that can't sample.
Feels So Good.
If, oh,
It didn't pop. It didn't pop. I thought it was going to pop. It didn't happen. It was like big in New York a little bit, like Red and them played it, but it wasn't like brand name. It wasn't like a big record. It was like, I thought it was gonna be like my De La Soul record. I was just gonna go. It didn't go like that.
Right. So was Wake Up the next single after that?
Yeah.
And that's the notorious video that was banned.
And Wake
on
Up got
TV.
me in like mad trouble when it came out. Because Brand Nubian's like, so let me just explain, like, you know, they're all gods. And that's like not a, you know, I went to high school in Brooklyn, so I'm familiar with, like, some of my best friends became God body. And so to me, it's like, whatever, it's just part of the world we lived in then. But it freaked motherfuckers out at the label. You know, they were scared. And they would, you know, dudes was scaring them on purpose, because when someone's scared, you like to scare them, right? Like, you're like, oh, you scared? Watch. You go, really scare you now, watch. So they scared them kind of, and they would like make people cry, like, you know, they were like on some shit. So, and Jamar stole the car vouchers, $17,000 in car vouchers. They ran up all these cars. The record went over budget. I had this guy work with named Michael Lago. He was Metallica's A&R guy. I said, Michael is like my best friend at work. This is so funny. I'm this hip hop kid with size 40 jeans and a skateboard, gold chain, and my best friend at work is a gay Puerto Rican heavy metal dude. He had the office next to me because he was a weirdo and I was a weirdo compared to everyone who worked there. So me and him hung out all the time. So I said, Michael, I'm $15,000 over budget. He goes, oh, Metallica's $300,000 over budget. Don't worry about it. I said, thank you. So I was fine. So I found out it didn't matter. The record cost like $70,000 to make at the end of the day. We put out Wake Up, and MTV bans the video because it has the dude, the devil.
The devil, right.
Yeah, so they dead the video. And Fat Five Freddy directs the video. He hosts MTV Raps,
Exactly.
and they banned the video. Like, and people were like, how the fuck did you manage to do that? So I got some hot water about it, but the record started selling.
Yeah,
A slow burner.
Yeah. You know, really, you know, as far as, you know, the 5%, you know, that knowledge had been in records before.
Oh yeah,
It was
they're not
coded.
the first.
It was coded. You know, nobody ever made a video visually
It
explaining
said
what we
technology
believe.
on the wall, on the shit. I loved it. Look, man, when I was a kid, like, my father went to high school at Stokely Carmichael. He used to come to my house. When he lived in Africa, he'd come visit us. Bobby Seale was friends with my pops. The Young Lords were down the block from my house. I was raised, my parents were political activists. I was raised around a lot of Afrocentric stuff in the 70s. For me, that shit is always super cool. That shit is like, that, it sits side by side. It was like Shaft and the Black Panthers. I can't explain it. It's just some shit to me, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I grew up like thinking that shit was super cool. So when Brand Nubians and really Public Enemy, when they jump off, I'm like, that's the coolest shit. That's like so cool to me. You know, so I wanted to kind of like make some music like that because it was really exciting. It had something to say, a message. Right? It's not just, look, no knock on Rob Bass, but I don't want to make Rob Bass.
I understand.
You know, I want to make Brand Nubian.
Well, and I always felt like those cats that had that knowledge of that 5%, they had something extra.
Of course.
You know, in their toolkit, so to speak, because they had a whole, like, you know, Kane, Rakim, G-Rap, all of the guys who had that Islamic background, they had their own coded language. And,
Rakim, he was dropping like, you
listen to Follow the Leader,
it's all
stuff he's saying on there about,
all
you
of
know,
it. Yeah.
planets as small as balls of clay is all, you know, it's incredible.
21 MCs in a line, like, you know, the whole shit, like, you know, he's dropping lessons and all that. So, and I knew a lot about, like, dudes, you know, guys weren't supposed to show me the lessons, but I seen them in high school. I seen them. So I knew a bit about it. And so I just was always rocking with them. It was just, you know, I loved them. They were great. For me, they were great. And I love the fact that they scared people. I was like kind of punk rock to me.
They did. And Wake Up, I mean, Pooh-Bah actually says the whole mathematics.
The whole thing. He says, he breaks it all down. He says it all. So, you know.
So from there, I know Slow Down was a really big radio.
Slow Down was a big record.
Radio.
All for One was a pretty big record.
Yes.
And that record was one of those records, like, it was pretty East Coast, but it was big in New York for a long fucking time. It rocked for about a year.
Oh, definitely.
You know, and if bootleggers hadn't killed us, we might have got a gold record. That was one of the most bootleg records of all time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember it coming out right around the time that Tribe's first album.
And Tribe was always like, well, look, man, Tribe made more palatable music.
Right.
But we were like native tongue adjacent. Like Brand Nubians, like people would say they were native tongue, but if you ask them, like, nah, we're not in the native tongues. Like they were a little harder, you know what I mean? A little to the left of it.
Yeah. Drop the Bomb was dope, and then Pooh Bah, a couple of those
And
solos.
Drop the Bomb's a DC song, really.
It is, right?
I mean, it's it's trouble funk.
Yeah, right, yep. And I think they use it cool in the gang.
Yeah, the jungle jazz.
Yeah, jungle jazz. Yeah. So, and then a couple of Pooh Bah solos. Who can get busy like this man? Pooh Bah is this incredible artist. Which brings me to something you said in the book.
Guy, I love you. I just want to say, I just want to say hello to you. I love you. That's my man right there. I'll see you in a second. I just want to say hello to you.
So, something you said in the book that I found interesting, if you could expound upon it. You talked about the difference between like the drive of a cat, like the drive of somebody like Busta Rhymes, which has put him where he is now, arguably the greatest.
Busta Rhymes is crazy.
Yeah.
Busta Rhymes was the hardest working man in show business, always was. He always wanted to be famous.
Right.
He wanted things. He's that dude. And Pooh Bah was too easy for him. Like we would all we all looked up, all my artists looked up to Max. Like Doom, like everyone looked up. Max was he was the apex.
You know Pooh Bah, Maxwell.
He was the god. Like he was like, he was referred to within the clique as the god. Like, he was the one, and he was lazy, He didn't like to work hard. It came too easy. Sometimes when things are so easy for you, take them for granted. Right. It's just how we all know those dudes. The guy who could, he could dunk on anyone, but he never played high school basketball because he was too cool.
Right. Oh yeah, definitely.
We all know, and Pooh Bah's kind of that dude. He could do anything. So he just didn't care, because what people don't know, he's a really good producer too. He produced All for One. Like he's a super good producer. So he just was like, he lost the plot. He did a solo record, and I felt like a solo record, Real to Real, is good, but it's not fantastic. And it could have been fantastic.
Oh, Real to Real?
Real to Real, he was supposed to work with Pete Rock. He didn't want to do it.
Oh wow, why not?
I don't know. I was like, Pete wants to do like half the record, and he was like, I'm nah.
Wow.
Yeah, he just was like, nodded. I don't know why he did it. Because Pete and him had a song before all this shit happened called Pooh Bah Maxwell, Yes Sir Honey. It was like this one record that came, it's online now, you can find it, but it was off Funky Penguin, was the drums, and that was supposed to be it, and it never happened.
Wow, that's crazy. That's crazy. So,
and then you got Bus, and Bus is, he's the animal.
Well, it was obvious just watching like the PTA video back in the days.
Maddie will tell you, he was there. You would see him perform, and everyone want to see Buster. Yeah. It would be like this, and Buster go, hey, and then go back like this.
In all fairness,
Brown was nice too.
when they first came out,
him and Brown.
Oh, his delivery was crazy. Brown, the energy was always compared to Cold Crush back then.
And what happened was the balance of power shifted.
It did. For me, was that car wash when they were on stage with KRS.
That's
Fuzz was really the one that was holding it on.
You saw it, so and there was like all this infighting, and like I'd seen like tension in bands before, and it's not always bad. Sometimes tension is dope. Sometimes tension will make shit better. Like, you always hear that like Led Zeppelin didn't get along, like Rolling Stones, look at the Who hated each other. Like there's like a history of like lots of like tension in bands. So I thought it might help the leaders, but what's bugged out, how I signed them, I seen them rock with one mic off Impeach the President at Payday. And I was like, I'm signing these dudes. And Charlie Brown knew who I was, I don't know how. And I was like, come to my office. He came to my office by himself. I found out later they had broken up. This is the legend, that they broke up before. They got back together basically to get a deal with me. They had broken up already. And the first time they came to my office, all of them, Buster and Charlie got in a big argument.
Wow.
And I was like, this is gonna be interesting. But they were so good live, I signed them, and I thought they were gonna be one of the greats. I really thought they were gonna be like one of the all-time greats, like the new Cold Crush brothers. And it just was too much, like the infighting always like thwarted the final message. Like they're the opposite of the Beasties.
Yeah.
So the Beasties are like the sum of their parts. Like as MCs, they're like cool, but they're not like, they're not like, there's no Busta Rhymes in the Beastie Boys.
Right.
But like some of their parts is tremendous. And De La, probably better rappers, but some of the part is tremendous.
Yes.
Leaders, it was like the sum of the parts didn't work. The math was off. Like a decimal got misplaced or some shit.
I totally agree. I mean, when I saw Sob Story, that's when I knew Busta was special. I mean, everybody, like you said, Brown was special too, but something about his performance on that.
Scenario, the best thing that ever happened is the worst thing that ever happened.
Dungeon Dragon.
And that's the worst thing. And you know, look.
Oh, definitely.
Q-Tip threw an alley-oop. That was Tip's man, and Tip threw an alley-oop, and he took it home. And you know, like, it's one of the greatest verses. I mean, look, how many clubs you've been in, they only play that verse, right? Because it's that good. And after that, it was all bets were off. Shit just escalated, and you know, we're still making, the second record's not out yet, but he gets a part in, this is the craziest. So my friend's mom, Dolores Robinson, managed John Singleton. They called me up, they said, do you have any rappers who want to audition for a movie? I said, Bus. So first off, Busta was my man, that's my man. Like, so I was like, and I always thought he could be an actor. I said, Bus, you should audition for this movie. He gets the part, higher learning. So he's doing a movie, he's on scenario. It's not a good, it's a lot of tension, too much tension. And they make the first version of Time, and it's not good to me. And it's not good to Chris Lighty. And we don't know what to do. And I think Busta knew it wasn't good. So me and Chris powwow. And Chris is like, you know what's really up? I was like, I do. Busta's gonna do a solo record one day. And we're like, yeah. He's like, exactly. I was like, how do we fix this? He's like, I don't know. Q-Tip? Yo, why don't we have Q-Tip do the whole record? See if Tip will do it. So we have a meeting. Tip is like, I'll do it. And Tip was like, yo, I'm down. Yeah. I was like, because I can't get them to listen. So he knows that. We try to throw the idea at them, and it doesn't. Only Buster's down with it. Charlie Brown said they stole the East Coast stomp from us. We were on tour, and they stole the East Coast stomp. Wow. And I was like, really? Because everyone did that, right? Everyone was doing that. So that was, it didn't work out, and I sent them back to the record. They did it again. It was like marginally better. And like, I don't care for that record. Some people love it. But there wasn't hits on it. You just knew it wasn't gonna happen.
I like Spontaneous. I thought that was good, but it was harder to listen to.
I like the first single, and Dinko of all people produced it. No one knows that.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
wow.
He made that beat.
Spontaneous was not.
I think it was not. What was the first single again?
Spontaneous, not. Sam Shepard did that.
Was that
the last beat he ever did? First single was What's Next on the Menu.
What's next? Okay, gotcha.
It had a very good Large Professor remix too.
Yeah.
But it didn't pop. I knew it wasn't gonna pop. So it was Busta. It was, so they do the MTV thing, and we all know what happens.
Yeah. Sure.
They break up on MTV.
Yeah.
Like, has anyone ever had a group break up in front of the whole world before? Like, talk about a bad, and MTV ran the fucking thing. Like, I was like, yo, Jack Benson, go fuck yourself. Like, why would you do that to me? So, and I wasn't there when it happened, but Busta, my publicist called me right when it happened, and Bus got on the phone, and he was super, super hot. And he came to my house, and we just smoked mad weed. I calmed him down. But he was so, you ever seen someone so mad they cry? Not because they're sad, because they want to kill somebody? That's how mad he was. And I was like, yo, man, solo time. But it still took him 2 years to make the solo record. He didn't want to quit the Leaders. So I'm telling you, he did not want to quit the Leaders. He was like, I don't want to. And I think it was because he was scared. I think he was scared to be a solo artist. He'd never been a solo artist before. But he was nervous. He was nervous about doing it. He didn't have the confidence yet. But he got the confidence and then some.
Yeah, certainly.
A Flavor of the Year did not hurt.
Oh, man.
When that pops off, it's like and I remember Puff was like, yo, what's up with Busta? Like, he always wanted to try and get him from Elektra. Diddy would always be in my ear about him. Always. He always fucked with him.
Right, because more than he was on live remixes.
Yeah. He's victorious, like he's in the video. Diddy always fucked with him, and Busta's smart enough. He had Tip over here, he had Diddy over here, he's got this dude over here. He's a politician, right? He's driven and a politician. And don't give him a 16, he's gonna smoke you.
Every time.
So you know what it is. Maybe it's a West Indian work ethic. I don't know what it is, man. He's just like, he's a hard-working dude. And like, if I go to the studio with him, he will play me 200. He will wear me out playing me records. He played me that Mary J. Blige record on the last album 10 years before it came out. He will hold records forever and a day. He's bugged out like that. He probably has like, I want to see him at Dre's spot. He must have played me 40 records Like, and like, you know, can't take pictures over there. Like you gotta like keep everything clandestine. Yo, he had like 40 records with Dre. It was bugged out.
Wow.
Yeah, but this wasn't that long ago. This was like a year ago.
Because they never dropped it, right?
They dropped one album,
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was.
the
one.
Break Your Neck joint.
Yeah. There's some stuff on there too. Wow. So Pete Rock and CL Smooth.
It's the easiest record I ever had anything to do with. I didn't have to do anything. Pete Rock was a genius. I go there, I smoke some weed with Pete. He plays me something that blows my mind. We go and eat food, or I go get food, and that's it.
Well, let me back. What's the introduction? How do you know each other?
So Raul Roach loved Heavy D. He was like, I want my own Heavy D. And he brought in Eddie F. So Eddie F has Pete Rock. Pete Rock's on the radio. He's on BLS, on the In Control joint. And he was playing his own demos. So he asked me to sit in on the meeting. And he's like, I want to sign him. I was like, okay. He's like, but I'm only going to do it if you back me up. I was like, so sign him. So, and then Raul leaves the label. Like a month later, like he goes to Run Quest Records. So I'm with Pete Rock. And I knew Eddie already. Eddie was already my man. So it was no thing. And he wasn't, Raul was like, he wanted to do it first, but he wasn't really involved like that. So we put out the EP.
All sold out.
But we dropped the wrong single first, Go With The Flow. And Funk Master Flex turned it over. He started playing The Creator. Then we made another test press, and it was The Creator on both sides, both versions.
Dope.
And that starts to pop. So we had a hit record off the EP, but we didn't have no album. So we go into album mode. And then Pete's in high gear. He does a Shut 'Em Down remix. That's maybe the greatest remix ever done, one of them. He's on fire, like Pete's on fire. And Pete, like, look, I always say, like, there's a couple guys like Premier, Pete, Tip, Dre, Dilla. Like, them dudes is like Picasso. Like, they did that RZA, they do something in a moment in time that's like, it's a beautiful piece of art. They're like Stevie Wonder or some shit, right?
Yeah.
It's like George Clinton, whatever it is, Outkast did it, right? It's this beautiful piece of art. And man, like Pete Rock was creating a new vocabulary of music.
Yeah, he was.
The loud snares, the crazy horn delays, filter bass lines. And I knew some of those tricks, but I never knew how to get a filter bass line that defined. Yeah. Right? And just the shit he was doing was like, it was mind-boggling. It was mind-boggling at that time. Like, we were like, and I remember Preem, man, I seen Preem, he was like, yo, what's going on with that Pete Rock album? Like, yo, when's that coming out? Like, he was like, all the dudes who I respected were huge fans. It was one of those things. So, it was like, I knew I had it. We knew we had it, and they picked a single. I didn't know if Reminisce was a hit. It has no chorus, really. But that shit bugged me out when I first heard it, because I don't think anyone had done the live snare before. Maybe, but it was one of the first times. Okay. And someone else did use that record before, Large Pro, for Slick Rick. It's a boy, but he didn't use it like that. Right. So when I heard it, I was like, it was just a mind-boggling record. It was just fucking unbelievable. And they were adamant that was a single, and it went. Yeah. It popped off from jump.
I mean, it was a dope album. Mecca and the Soul Brother was a dope single that was on the EP. I mean,
the whole album was really good, and Pooh Bah helped him. Pooh Bah and Grap wrote the rhymes for him. I wonder if Grap is here, man. I should have called Grap. He lives in D.C. I'm an idiot. Can't believe I didn't call him.
I'm surprised he's not here.
I'm a dumbass.
He was on the radio, too. He's a household name in New York before he dropped.
He was. He was playing the demos.
Yeah, it was with Marley, right?
Yeah, he was 17. Yeah, and he was. Yeah, he was very humble, very, very humble at that time.
First time I heard them together was a remix of Johnny Gill's "Rub You the Right Way."
Yo, I forgot about that shit. Yeah, I forgot about that.
CL Smooth rhymes on it.
He did. I forgot about that. Cause he was in the Uptown wing of things, right? So because he comes from that. He really should have been on Uptown, really. But Eddie F wanted his own thing, Untouchable Music. He didn't want to do it with Andre. He wanted his own joint, so we gave him his own joint. Yeah.
Yeah, that was my introduction to him, was that Rub You the Right Way.
Yo, when I first met Hev, the first time I met him, he was like we knew who each other were, but we didn't know each other. And he was like, he just gave me a hug and said, thank you. He said, thank you for looking out for my cousin. It was bugged me out. It was super cool.
That was my first time hearing their name on, I think it was Girls They Love Me.
Yeah.
He said Pete Rock and CL Smooth was on stage drinking Cisco, and that became the hook for Mecca and the Soul Brother.
But 100%. And that is Pete Rock's biological cousin. Yeah.
In fact, it was his birthday a couple of days ago.
It was. Pete had the thing on. I seen it. Running mad long. Okay.
Okay. You go ahead.
Do you guys have any questions? Because we're stuck in like the middle of it, but.
How did Beastie Boys get from Cookie Puss to She's On? And also, can you touch on the stimulated dummies?
I wasn't in the Beastie Boys, so I don't know exactly how they did it. They did it because they were geniuses. I don't know, man. They were on it. Those guys are like super funny dudes. They just wanted to rap music, but look, punk rock got too tough guy, and we're like, this is so whack. Like all these bozos showed up, and it's like fucking all the dudes from Queens we didn't want to hang out with. We're like, fuck this, and we got into, we started going to hip hop clubs, and I guess Cookie Puss they loved it, and then Rick seen some genius in them, and he just started trying to mold them, and they evolved into what they were. It was like natural evolution. It was just like the course of things to come. It was reflective of New York City at the time, I think. And Stimulated Dummies was me, my partner Gibi DeJohnny, and John Gamble. They both passed away, 2019 and 2020. We're just a bunch of guys smoking weed in the basement, the size of like a broom closet, just making beats. We had no plan. We loved Paul's Boutique. We had a lot of records, and we were like, we're just gonna make some shit. We had no end game, no science. We had a bag of weed and a lot of camaraderie. That was it. We just started making shit. It was like no plan at all. It was like an excuse for us to hang out every day, more or less.
What was the first production y'all had?
We did a remix for Shinehead, and it's so funny because we used Wake Up Everybody. We used the shit that Biz used, and I don't think we realized Biz used it. Like, we just used it anyway. It was like, yo, and it was my man Gibi had the idea. He was like, I want to use this. I was like, that shit's crazy. And it's like the record everyone's mom has, right?
Right.
Like, you hear that record your whole life.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's it. I would always just put beat tapes in front of my artists or whoever, and if I was lucky, they picked one. And sometimes they did. We had good chemistry with Pooh, I don't know why. He liked Stax records, we liked Stax records. So.
Definitely.
But we were like, we made a lot of shit, but like, we were like, we're not like Tip or Primo, like I never like, we're over here. Those guys to me are like gods, like, you know what I mean? And I was lucky enough to be around some of those guys and pick up some tricks. Oh, yeah.
I graduated high school in '87. Rappers in Life, fourth grade, changed my life too.
I'm older than you?
Just like 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
I read at a 63-year-old level, most people. In this little town in southern West Virginia I grew up in, one of the hot commodities in '83, '84, '85 was somebody's cousin would UPS us 4 hours of Red Alert Saturday.
Yeah, those shits went around the world.
Hot 98.7.
Yeah.
And if you could get 4 Maxell XL2 60-minute cassettes, you could have music a week behind New York City in southern West Virginia. That was our bootleg pipeline. Do you have any special memories of Saturday night due to your relationship with Red Alert?
Many. And Chuck Chill Out, because I had a promo. I had a promo on Chuck Chill Out when I was nobody. He just was like, yo, do a promo. Like, I don't know why. He was my man. That later would change, but
Oh, wow.
Red, man, them shows, I had my man in London. They used to hit me up to make the tapes for him. I send them to him every week. I would send them to him on Def Jam and Rush's FedEx. I'd be like, yo, I'm gonna FedEx you this. And I would send them to him. And Glenn Friedman swears that he gave me a whole box of tapes to send to Ian MacKaye, and that they never got there. And Glenn was like, I think you threw them in the garbage. And I met Ian MacKaye, and he was all salty still about it like 15 years ago. He was like, yo, whatever happened with that box of tapes? And I was like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I asked Glenn about it. And Glenn swears I threw them in the garbage out of spite. I don't remember it. But it could have happened. Who knows? But yeah, man, the Red Alert tapes, like Red Alert was, I remember, this is crazy. I was listening to Red Alert, and KRS-One had the promo. He said, Shantae is not down with us. And it sounded like Dante is not down with us. And I wanted to cry. And then my man was like, yo, he said Shantae, you schmuck. But I had all those tapes, man. I listened to Red Alert religiously. Red Alert too, he set the tempo, the tone for the way people DJ. You start off with some reggae, play some reggae joints, ease into the night, then you play, tempo starts to go up, you play your joints, your head nod joints, then you get to the raw bass, warm it up Kane, you get to that, the fast joints, and then what's he ended with? Before I Let Go. Right? Keep rising to the top. So he had the whole tempo, and that was the tempo for all DJs around the world for a long time. And that was like, his influence was massive because like everyone wanted to play the way it's bugged out. Dudes in clubs want to play the way he played on the radio. It's bugged out. And he also was ill because he would like get a record, play it in real time at the quarters. If that record worked, then he plays it on the radio, right? So he had like, because he did quarters on Friday, the show on Saturday. So he had this whole system of how he did it. And he also didn't play favorites. He played whatever he liked. He told me, because I love Red, man. I talk to Uncle Red all the time. He's one of the best people in the whole world. I talked to him this week, and he had told me one time that some big drug dealer was like, yo, I'm gonna give you $5,000 to play my shit. He's like, I don't like your record, I'm not playing your record. He said, what if I chopped your hands off? And he said, if you got to do it, you know? Because Red he doesn't, you know, if you bothered Red, you're an idiot. You're the worst person because everyone loves him. I think he might be the most beloved man in the history of hip hop. He's like one of the people that everyone loves. No one can say a bad word about that man. And I'll close with this. He used to live on 113th Street in Adam Clayton Powell. I lived on 108th and Broadway. I would go and hang out with him, go to the club. He would drive me home. Like, and then we go to Willie Burger and eat. And I was a little kid, like I was like a kid hanging out with Red Alert doing this shit. And I was just like, I was living my dream. I can't explain other than that. I have 2 dimes to rub together, but I'm hanging out with Red Alert, eating at Willie Burger in Harlem at 4 a.m. It's like, what could be better than that? You know, so.
That's an incredible era, though. You know, you bringing those tapes up, you know, people that I knew in New York that would ship tapes down to Virginia.
Yo, you know, I've heard the story all over the world. Like, all over the world, people have told me this.
But those tapes are so ingrained in the way the records were played that certain records I hear today.
Yo, me too, B. I can't believe you said that. That's so crazy.
So when Just Ice...
JVC Force.
JVC Force, but when Just Ice did Latoya, right? There's a part where he's, I'm leaving. So Red was Vaxpin, I'm leaving. You know, just a random, you know, weekend night. And I had that tape. And if I hear Just Ice today, I'm still waiting for that mix to come in that way because I played that mix so much. Because back in the days, we would record off the radio. But if you record off the local radio, it wasn't cool to play that on your boombox. Because the local guy saying, this is WANT. But if you had a BLS or KISS tape, that was cool because New York was still everything at that time. And you're in Virginia, you got a you got a New York drop on your joint. It's like, okay, you got a Red tape. But some of those songs, man, like you said, JVC Force.
And the way I hear JVC Force, he always cut the front back and forth.
Yep.
He always played it a couple times before he dropped the drums.
And I still hear it that way.
That's exactly how I hear it. That's why I said it when he said it. It's like, yo, I always hear JVC Force how he played it.
Incredible, yeah. Red Alert and Marley and Chuck Chill Out.
Yo, you know what? I always liked Red shows better. He had better promos. And he would always play like a couple of ill reggae joints in the beginning. I always loved that.
Oh, the promos were dope. The ultramagnetic ones.
Oh, man. Yeah, he
had Nice, TR-808.
TR-808, that never really came out. That was like his record.
That's what it is.
Yeah. And then there's a lot of them, like a whole bunch of them.
There's a whole bunch.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but I can't explain it. Like, you know what? You know what's funny though? Red played the Juice Crew.
Yeah, he did.
Red never didn't play Biz, Kane, Master Ace. He played all those records. He played all the records that he liked that were Juice Crew records. He didn't play Duck Alert, of course, but he played everything else.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Like Super Raw, stuff that like the Juice Crew would cut Red when they play, like Super Raw with Kane and
Right, true indeed.
G-Rap.
that's what I'm saying.
Or even on I Write the Songs. I don't think I ever heard Red play that, the Heavy D and Biz shit, but I would hear Marley play it because Marley made it. But still, Red Alert show was better. I don't care. He had a better show.
I have no argument. And what you said about him being the most beloved cat, like I talked to Aaron Fuchs from Tough City.
Yeah.
And he
who's not the most beloved cat? He sued everybody. He caught me once.
Oh, for Impeach the President?
Bitch.
I knew it was Impeach the President. But he said that Red was one of the few people that would just play anything.
Play anything you like. Anything you like. If he liked it, he played it.
Yeah, like
if he liked it, he played it. That's it.
Yeah.
That's simple.
100%.
Yeah, he didn't have politics.
Not at all.
And you know, he didn't take the bag. You couldn't give him a bag.
Right.
He wasn't taking it.
Yeah, and he's still the realest guy to this day.
He had integrity.
Big up
You
the
know?
man.
Anyways, Homeboy had a question right there.
I appreciate that. First, I just want to say thank you for the book because
Thank you.
has given me the chance to live by your experiences, being a couple years behind you, and growing up and hearing these stories and seeing these things, just the in-depth behind and the fact that you're fused all together. So question that I had for you, with all of the production teams and crews that you've been around, who was the most, who gave the most leeway as far as these are some of the tricks and some of the things that I'm doing, and gave you access to that, to see that? Who kind of kept that stuff behind the cuff? Like, you can hear it, but I'm not letting you see how I do it.
Surprising that you asked that, because, and I'll give you an answer that if you know him, you probably wouldn't think this. Pete Rock, he showed me a lot of shit.
Okay.
Pete Rock showed me a lot of records, and his engineer, Jamie Stout. So when I did Everlast, Whitey Ford Sings the Blues, I stole Jamie from Pete, because I wanted my shit to sound a certain way. So I learned a lot from Pete. I learned a lot from Q-Tip. Q-Tip showed me a bunch of crazy tricks. And Tip was the dude, less is more, you know? So I learned that from him. And don't quantize your drums. Tip almost never used quantize. Almost never. That's his natural rhythm.
Wow.
And I was like, wow. And the other guy who I learned a lot from was DJ Muggs, because he doesn't, his shit don't make no sense. He does, his shit is breaks all, he doesn't really, when he did that first Cypress record, he didn't really know what he's doing, right? But he knew it sounded good. So he didn't worry about the rules. And RZA's like that too, but I didn't really see RZA make stuff. I just had the reels, you know, because he's like that too. But like there was with Muggs, there's like an idiot savant thing. And I don't necessarily want to say I learned how to do stuff from him. I learned not to worry about it being perfect. I learned that if it sounds funky, leave that shit alone. So those are a couple of cats I learned things from. And Buck Wild, Diamond, all them. Buck Wild showed me some shit too. He was the first dude I seen playing a bass note on the MP. And he showed me how to do that. You know what I'm talking about? You take the bass note, down tune it, so you can make your own bass line. Buck Wild showed me how to do that on MP. Buck was always a really good friend of mine, so me and him would hang out a lot. He showed me little tricks. Yeah, guy. What do you can ask me anything, but you know everything, so there's nothing I can tell you. Oh, nice to meet you, man.
And I'm, hip hop head, and I tried to explain to him what the city was like when Busta dropped Wu-Tang, man. Like, to me, one of the greatest hip hop records, greatest debut singles for artists. Just like, I've never seen the city was so on fire with this record.
I got to tell you a crazy thing about that record. I felt a kind of way about that record because I had just left Elektra. I worked on that album and I wasn't there to enjoy the success. I went to Def Jam and Busta yelled at me about it too. He seen me one day, he was mad at me.
But you made that record.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't make the record. Shamello made the record. I remember when Bus came to me with that beat. And what people don't know is Busta had like 5 different songs over that beat. 5.
I thought Shamello did Hands Around.
Oh, you're right. Rashad's. You know what's crazy? I took him to Rashad's house in Staten Island. And we did the shit. We did it first in Rashad's house. That was when we first did it. And Rashad was he was like a lot of people have feelings about Rashad back then. He's a different man now, but he had a little problem with some friends of mine. DITC and him had a thing, and very good friends with Showbiz and a couple of those guys. So it was, I almost felt like I was in enemy territory a little bit. But I remember when he made it. I remember when he played it for us in the MP. When he played it, and we were bugging out. We're like, yo, that shit. We're like, whoa. And the Shamello joint, he had 5 other songs over that before that was the song.
Wow.
Busta's like that. He'll do that. He'll like try out different things and sit on a beat for years. But that record was so natural for him. That's Busta. He's like, he's incredible. He's one of the, I always feel he's underrated, right? Because he's the greatest live performer, but people never have him in like the top 50 list, top 20 list, like, and I don't get it. I'm like, he's incredible, and he's still incredible.
Yeah.
His last album, the EP was cool, but the album was incredible.
Yeah, I remember that.
That shit was banging.
Yeah.
That was like my pandemic album.
Yeah.
Anyone else have any questions?
I got one more.
Of course.
So when you went to Def Jam, I remember.
When I went back to Def Jam?
You went back to Def Jam and you signed Trigger, I believe, right?
Trigger the Gambler. And DV Elias Christ, yeah.
And you never put an album.
No, and I had we had this one record that was on Nutty Professor. I worked on the soundtrack, and it was like a New York hit, and then it didn't go the distance, And I was like having mad problems at Def Jam. Like I couldn't get along with, and I blame myself as much as anyone. I just didn't get along with Julie Greenwald and some people there. I was like butting heads. So I had this deal with Def Jam. They had to pay me X amount of money for 2 years. And on the second year, I just went to LA and made Everlast record on their dime. I was like, fuck this, I ain't coming in the office no more. I'm gonna go out west and make a record with Everlast. And I got paid by them to make that record. And Lior was so mad at me when it became a hit record. He was like, you took $800,000 from me and you didn't give me shit. You gave Tom Silverman the biggest record of his life. And I was like, yeah, you know, whatever, it's cool. It was at the Magic Show and Russell told me to shut up. He said, that's your man, shut up, give him a hug.
Lastly, if nobody else has any questions, oh, you got one more.
You said that Ad Rock found LL demo.
That's what they say.
What was on that demo?
I have no idea. You gotta ask Adam. I don't know. I think that
It
was.
might have been I Need a Beat.
I think it was I Need a Beat. I think it was, but I think it wasn't the beat though. I think it was like a different.
Because I think Ad Rock did something with the beat on.
He did. Ad Rock made the beat. He programmed the 808 because he was nice at that. And I also heard that LL showed up and he had on the Kumo D boots, and they were like, yo, nah. Russell was like, nah, you got to put on Jordan. You got to get right. I heard he looked like old school, like he was dated looking. And they told him, nah. Remember when dudes wore the crazy boots? I heard he showed up.
I never knew that.
That was the legend, that he showed up, his kit was wrong.
I know that was, there had been addresses on rap record labels before, of course.
And that's why he sent it to the dorm room.
But that one was very inviting because it was, it was the dorm room.
Because it's yours.
Right,
And,
exactly.
and honestly, T. La Rock was supposed to be the first MC, but he supposedly got a big head. And they was like, we're out.
And also his brother Special K, had written a lot of that song, and he was.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, nobody knew at the time.
You know, the Beastie Boys are the dudes in the background. Boom, ba bap, ba boom bap. That's them.
Yeah, that's crazy.
What do you want to ask me, Matty?
Something about Pyro. I saw Domino, I think, post recently. I didn't know that you introduced him to Dell.
Yeah, that's in the book. Nah. That's in the book. And he's like one of my best friends. So I knew Ice Cube. I met NWA. This is crazy. I took Latifah to LA. I took De La too. First time they went, we did World on Wheels. And then I took Latifah, we did World on Wheels and Skateland. And there was an Uncle Jam, I don't know if you guys know who Uncle Jam is, Uncle Jam's Army.
Definitely.
So we did a show, it was Skateland with Uncle Jam. And we're from New York, we don't have gangbanging. Yo, that shit was dead, all red. That shit was bugged the fuck out. I never seen nothing like it. And World on Wheels was palatial compared to Skateland. Skateland was fucked up. It smelled like Sherm. So we went in there and I met Ice Cube and Dr. Dre in the Blood Club, which is bugged out. And we had a Booyah dude who was our security. And I started talking to them and they loved Latifah. They was fucking with her. And I was like, I became friends with them. I used to talk to them on the phone. So if you look at that first NWA record, they thank Dante Ross from Tommy Boy Records. And I didn't even realize that. Someone showed me way later. I forgot about it. I think I was gassed probably for a week when it came out, but I forgot about it. Wow. So me and Cube would always talk on the phone. He came to New York for the Urban Teen Awards. He didn't have a winter coat. I took him to Orchard Street, we got him a winter coat. And we went to the awards, it was dead winter, and they got booed. They got booed in New York at the Apollo. But I stayed friends with them. NWA, and I don't care what anyone says, NWA's first record, no one in New York except me and Dave Funkenklein listened to. That shit was no one. Red Alert played Eazy-E, and he played Express Yourself. He played Easier Said Than Done, but that shit had no audience.
Right.
And I stay friends with them. Cube leaves NWA, he comes to New York. I'm hanging out with him in New York when he's around Public Enemy. So we're friends. And he told me, yo, my cousin, he's bugged out. I want you to fuck with him. So he brought me Del. And Del was gonna be his Digital Underground, right? That was his plan. Del bucked he went left on the second album, but that was the plan. The record does pretty good, does okay. So I'm in San Francisco. I used to always go to Groove Merchant. You know that store? Yeah. So I used to buy mad records. That's the first store in America geared strictly to sell breaks, right? So it's in San Francisco. So I used to clean them out. And I was in there one day, I knew Mike and Jody who owned it. And Mike said, yo, I got this kid in the back. He rents the back studio. Yo, he's pretty good at the beats. And he buys all the same records as you. And I said, word? He said, yo, he's pretty nice. Like, you might want to check him out. And I was like, really? And he was like, I was like, yeah, whatever, because Mike was my boy. So we knocked on the shit, we went back there, and he had mad records, and he had an FC1. I'm like the only other dude to use that sampler, the Casio. I was like, you got an FC1? He's like, yeah. And then he was like, we started talking about records, and I played him a Pooh song with the Nightlighters loop. And yo, he played me the same loop that he had hooked up right afterwards. And it was like, we were like record bros, you know what I mean? It's like, da-da-da-da. And he was like, what are you doing here? I was like, I'm working with this dude, Dal, Ice Cube's cousin. You should meet him, you should fuck with him. And then I introduced him to those dudes. We went out to Oakland. He was a rapper. I'm gonna put him on Super Blast. His name was Domino D. And he had a song called Rhythmic American Poetry. That was his demo because I had the DOC scratch. I used to like the beat. He wasn't a great rapper. He was really nice with the beats. And we went out to hang out with Hyro. They were all underage. We snuck in a nightclub in the back. We hung out all night. Then we went to Ope's house, and we both had beat tapes, and we played beats. And them dudes freestyle to daylight, from like, cause clubs closed at 2. We was there to 6 in the morning, 7 in the morning, smoking, and they were rocking. And Dom doesn't smoke or drink, so I don't know how he stayed up. But when we drove back in the car, he said, I think I'm gonna stop rapping. See, I heard them. He's like, I'm never gonna be as good as them. And then he became Del's man. He started hanging out with them, and he became part of Hieroglyphics. And that's how it happened that day. But to me, that's not me, that's God. I'm just put in a place sometimes, if I'm lucky, to connect people, right? So
But what about the group? As the group's emerging, you didn't want to sign them?
So I signed Del. I could have had Souls as a layup.
Right.
They love me. But you know what I did? You know what I did, right?
The captain.
No. Captain, I don't want Captain to sign him. I took that shit, I told Reef and them to sign him.
Yeah, Reef is the first one. Yeah.
I said, Reef Stretch, y'all should sign him. And they was rapping in the stairway with Organized Confusion, destroying it. And then Reef went to Oakland with me to hang out with them. He was there too, yeah, we was fucking with him. And I was like, yo, sign him, that's yours. Him and Stretch, because that's my people, right? I want to see Reef get on. And Stretch had done me so many solids as a DJ. I was like, take that, like how you did with Dirty for me. I said, take that, that's you, do it. I gave him the rock, and then fucking Jive ran in, and they fucking stole him like a thief in the night. And they got him, and I was like, if I knew Jive was gonna sign him, I would have signed him. You know what I mean? I was always mad about that, because to me, that was Reef and Stretch, and that was like my people. I wanted them to have that. Because I want to see them come up. You know, you always want, and like, I'll tell you a story about Dirty real quick. So me and Matt used to always hang out, smoke weed. Like we would hang out, watch basketball, and smoke weed at my ghetto-ass apartment in Chelsea. That was like our hangout. Me and Matt were tight. We're still tight, it's my brother. So we go to my house, and we're taking the train out. I remember this clearly, because we've seen Das Effects in the train station. And I didn't know them, and you were talking to them. It was like, we gotta go to the Knicks in the playoffs. We gotta go watch a Knicks game. We ran to we were going to the train, and you told me you were going to go work at Loud, and then you told me that Wu-Tang Clan wasn't signed yet, but they were all gonna get solo deals. They were gonna sign to Loud. So I love Steve, and I was like late to the party. I cannot lie. Like I never had a shot to sign them, but that put me on to trying to sign them. And then I was looking for them, and they want Stretch. That week, Dirty does the whole album on fucking Stretch and Bob. Basically becomes a whole album, and I heard it, and I went up in a cab, and I met him that night. And that's how I ended up signing. But if Matt hadn't told me, I wouldn't have known. So Matt really helped me do that. Matt got all of them though. He got the whole clan. So I always give. And I said it, and I told Steve that, and I told Steve that like not that long ago. He's like, really? I was like, yeah, Matt was the one who really put me on. Like you didn't like say like go sign it, but you put it in my head. You definitely put that shit in my head.
They came to the source first.
You were the first dude who wrote about him. Like just so you know, Matt wrote about Poetical Prophets. Who knows who Poetical Prophets is? You know, you don't count.
Okay.
Yes. He put them in the source when they were Poetical Prophets. And then he put Wu-Tang in there. He wrote the Unsigned Hype column. He put everyone in the source, like everybody. But those are ones that like he ended up working with later. So, you know, he worked at Loud. He was an A&R guy for a long time, one of the best who ever did it. You know?
I appreciate you explaining that about Wu-Tang, because they weren't in the Unsigned Hype, which is why they don't get included into
Right.
the story.
Right.
Because they came to me like we're going to try to come out independently.
Right.
So we put them in the single spot.
Right, that's what it was. You told me that.
Major label singles a month, and one of them was this independent single out of Staten Island nobody had heard of. So that's kind of how all the DJs.
Yeah, you told me that when I was interviewing for the thing. I forgot. Yeah, because Matt he's one of the kings of this shit. He's one of the best who ever did it.
Yeah, definitely. Respect.
So I tried to hire Matt too. I was like, yo,
You asked me if I could type.
I asked him if he
I was
could.
like, hold up. No.
Yeah, he's like, I ain't fucking with that. I figured you work at the source, you could type. You're a writer, and Matt took the job at Loud. Matt went and took the job at Loud. And what you don't know is, I think I told you that Steve had offered me the president of Loud to be the president of A&R there, and I turned him down. Before he was trying to fuck it, he was like, come work with me, and I was like, because of John, because I had all these bands signed. I want to start all over again. You got to press reset. You know, I was making $275,000 a year. Steve offered me like $150. So I'm not going to take a pay cut and press reset on my career. And I didn't, look, I'll be honest, I didn't know Loud was going to pop. Fucking who knew? Matty wasn't there yet. He didn't make it pop yet. So, you know.
And like I told RZA too before he went there, Steve didn't have experience with the kind of hip hop we worked with. He had promoted Young MC and Tone Loc at that time.
That's so. It's true. What Steve really did, and like I won't talk about Steve too much, but I love Steve, and me and Matt both know him very well. Steve Rifkin, what he did, he worked all the Delicious Vinyl shit, and he had to connect. He had to connect at MTV. He's the one who got Wild Thing on MTV because he knew Rick Krim from his dad, so he got that in there, and he realized that he had made them millions and himself thousands. So he starts Loud with a dude named Fade, and Loud was Listeners of Urban Dialect. So that's how we started it, because he was like, oh.
He was the missing piece for why your era couldn't go flat. You know, I studied your era in the groups like Pete Rock and Music New School, and yes, it was bootleg.
But it was also we didn't have the
MTV
right.
Would not, and radio would not play.
He's a radio guy. He's the promo guy. He worked all my records. He was my promo guy in the West Coast. That's how I met him. He had a mullet. And his brother was my weed smoking partner at work, John. And his father's, you know, he's that guy, Jules Rifkin.
Mecca and the Soul Brother, or the main ingredient?
Mecca and the Soul Brother. I don't even have to think twice. And the reason I say that really is because it's the same tricks, the same techniques, the second time. So the first time, you know, and I always feel like not everyone, Tribe's one of the exceptions. But usually the first record's the best record for rap music. A lot of bands period. P, Tribe Called Quest. It happens sometimes. Mobb Deep. Because people don't even know the first Mobb Deep record. So, you know, so I think, but that first record.
Broadway?
Yes. You know, people don't, and that's because you wait your whole life to make your first record. That's your whole life force. You've been waiting your whole life for that shit. So bomb. This is all my energy I've ever thought about is right here. Cypress Hill, that's why that first record, he'd been waiting to make that forever, right?
Second one's Paycheck.
Right.
Second one makes all the money, but
My last question, and this is probably a stupid question I ask anyway, was Old Dirty always like that? The way that he was?
Old Dirty was always unhinged. It got worse. Drugs, money, fame. You know, I spent the last year, I produced a doc about Old Dirty Bastard with Sam Pollard and his son Jason. So I spent a lot of time going back through the Dirty story, really piecing it together. And like I'll say, like I said in the movie, like most people aren't made for fame and fortune. So the Beasties, De La Soul, they're like one of the few people I've seen unchanged really by fame and fortune. They remained themselves, and they didn't, you know, they didn't bug out, they didn't buy sports cars and get caught up in drugs and have 18 kids and all that shit. Dirty wasn't built for fame and fortune. He's someone who's bipolar, he has mental issues, he has substance abuse issues, he's raised in group homes, he's, you know, he lived a struggle, so all of a sudden he got everything he wants, right? So what happens? You know, he's unhinged already, he's got mental issues, so you add drugs in the mix, and it's a cautionary tale for lots of people. You know, you're not built for it. Like, and I can't even tell you if I got all that. Like, you know, and I'm a relatively stable person, so, you know, who knows, man? And his behavior got worse. And the one thing I say, because I'm sober now, I never told him to stop doing cocaine. He was fucking with drugs, and I knew it. And I never was like, "The fuck are you doing?" But I didn't feel I could do that because it didn't matter what you tell him. He's gonna do what he does. Like he's gonna be dirt. But he was always buck wild. He was buck wild from day one. He was always. I mean, he got shot twice while making a record. No, shot and then he got shot and then jumped through a window. He's in the hospital twice. He got arrested multiple times. He got kicked out of every nightclub in New York City. He had like 4 kids in the span of a year. Like, it's just crazy all this, he was always a wild one. I mean, were you there when he got in a wrestling match with Akinelli on stage? Because he wanted to get the mic from him? Like, he was, I think it was a supper club. And then he stole the wireless mic. He went home with the mic, and Chuck Bone called me. He was like, "Yo, D, you got to get me the mic back." I said, "Yeah, good luck with that." Yo, you want 30's number? Like it was. Wow, there's countless stories in the book about him because he's just so. I mean, he almost got me beat up by the Lost Boys. Chris Lighty was gonna shoot him and Uncle Sam. Oh, not Uncle Sam, Crazy Sam one night. Like it was like, if you were dirty, just hang on by your belt, his belt loop. Hopefully you get home safe. I think he wanted to be famous. I don't know if he, and we know that, Jizza helped with the rhymes and 60 Second and, 12 o'clock. Yeah, he was like a personality, like.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm gonna be famous. I mean, because you know that he had a lot of those songs for years.
That's what I'm saying. He just said the same shit over and over a lot of times.
I mean, on the same record, on the first record, he has the same verse twice. And Jizza had told me, he said, "Yo, I might have wrote that, but that's Dirty's rhyme." I said, "Well," I didn't say it like that.
That's funny.
So, I don't know. I don't know if there's anything else. We asked one more question, we got a question before we wrap it up. What's up, boss?
Double beats, you have a favorite piece of gear?
I moved around. I had a 12 and then an MP. I like the 2000. That was like my later day box when I was doing Everlast records. I'd seen Alchemist really killing it, and I took some lessons from Al. And I was like, okay, this was baby Al. This is when Al still had drums, and he still used the XL too. It's crazy. He still has the same. He got it, I was in the crib, he had it in the studio recently. I always liked that box because I just learned it, like I knew. And it was like, to me, like I always had people help me do shit. When I got on that, like that was when I was way more self-sufficient. Like I was like, I know what I'm doing now, like watch. And then that was also, Buck Wild gave me some lessons on it. Like I'd always give Buck props because he was like, "Yo, do this, check this out, do this." So.
Would you call that like the workhorse? Like
for me,
yeah.
And I literally though, I always used the Kai samplers. I had a 9, a 950, then I had 1100, and I also had a 6000 later, which had the most sampling time. And I used that for remixes. I did all these rock remix, I would sample the vocals for the whole song, and I'd fly them back on top of shit. This is before Pro Tools. This is the rig we used. We fly them in like four bars at a time. And if you missed one bar or you fuck something up, you have to do the whole thing over. It happened to me one time. I did a Korn remix. I thought it was done, and I realized I left out a part of the song. Had to do it again.
Wow.
Anyways, we're good?
Cool. Great stuff, bro.